There are three kinds of madmen you will see on the battlefield. Those who have completely lost their minds and only seek death. Those consumed by hatred who can no longer see anything around them. And then, Ian, the mysterious young man, began to recite some very strange words. Seeing this, Mason exclaimed in confusion, What is he mumbling about? Logan, standing beside him, suddenly shouted in frustration, Get back! Get back! I told you to get back. However, Ian paid him no mind and continued. Logan immediately raised his crossbow, his face full of indignation. He grumbled, This bastard! Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, Ian tore the scroll in his hands in half. All of a sudden, a beam of light shot down from the sky. Both Mason and Logan shouted in unison, What is that lightning? Then a bolt of lightning struck right where they were. Both Logan and Mason were sent flying by the lightning, screaming in pain. Help! Charging straight ahead with no armor or shield, I am curious about your true identity, you crazy mage. My name is Ritsuki Kadoyama. The moment I received my university acceptance letter, suddenly a truck sped towards Ian. Instant death. Ian thought to himself, Life really is a bitch. I thought my college life was finally about to start. I can't believe I died like a dog in a place like this. But when I opened my eyes, I was reincarnated as Ian, a farmer's son. Just then, Rovan and Roanna both cried out in shock, I can't believe it, Black Hair. My family dirt poor farmers in the Empire. While my parents and two older brothers were out working, my younger sister and I could only wander all day to find food. Not far away, some other kids shouted mockingly, Look, it's the Crow Boy, how creepy! Ian, eating a grilled fish, glanced at them and thought grimly, Those kids, it's not like I wanted to be born with black hair. Damn these medieval times. I was reincarnated, and I still have to live in poverty like this. Suddenly, something appeared, catching his attention. Is this my status window? The window displayed the name Ian Gavin. The system announced, You are nameless. Hearing that, he froze, only able to curse his fate. Damn it. Even with a status window, there is nothing I can do. Even if I toil away every day, it will still be a life of debt where I gain nothing. I am just inheriting that life from my parents. I can't even dream of any job other than farming. I do not have the chance to learn anything else either. I believe that if I could get an education, I could do anything well. I wonder if there is any place that would take me. However, Ian's train of thought was interrupted by Mai Sen's wide eyes. She looked at him and pointed to her own small drooling mouth. Ian quickly took out another grilled fish and gave it to her. He said, Here, have this one too. Mai Sen happily accepted it. Thank you, brother. After that, she excitedly told him, Let's go get dessert. He enthusiastically agreed. Okay, let's go. A little later, in another part of the forest, Ian told Maisen not to wander too far. Maisen gave a small nod and went back to happily munching on the sweet fruits. He watched her with a soft smile, thinking it feels like I just taught her the word dessert not too long ago. She's growing up so fast. Just then, a noise from nearby caught Wai-An's attention. He spotted a large, dark figure hiding in the nearby bushes. Seeing this, Wai-An moved closer to get a better look. A moment later, he let out a horrified scream when he realized what it was. A massive bear suddenly appeared, its eyes glowing red. It let out a deafening roar right in front of Wai-An and Maisen. In an instant, it lunged at them with its sharp claws. Yan quickly pulled Maisen into a tight hug, stumbling backward in terror. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck the bear out of nowhere. The bear's entire body was instantly charred black. Finally, it collapsed to the ground right before the two children's eyes. Just then, Wai-In heard someone's voice. Oh dear, I might have overdone it a little. Hello there, kiddo. The person asked Wai-In cheerfully. This is the Feldenberg territory, isn't it? Yi-An was a little wary of the person before him. He stammered, Yes, that's right. But in his mind, he thought, Did she take down that bear? Who is she? The woman introduced herself. I am Edith, a traveling mage. Yan said in awe, A mage. They're powerful beings who appear on the battlefield. They wield incredible skills with terrifying destructive power. Why would someone like her be in a remote town like this? Edith spoke up. I'm looking for a boy with black hair who lives in this town. Besides you, is there anyone else with black hair? Anne immediately replied, No, it's just me. She looked him over and said, Well, then it seems I've found the right person. Anne was a little doubtful. He looked at her and asked, Me? At that moment, Edith recalled someone's words, Find a black-haired boy in the territory of Feldenberg Klopp. If you take him as your disciple, something good will happen. And so she thought to herself, his eyes are full of curiosity mixed with fear, and he has such a lively and endearing spirit, so all I have to do is take this little one as my disciple. With that thought, Edith let out a big laugh and said, "That darn space mage?" Ian frowned, thinking, I've heard that mages are all terrifying eccentrics, but she seems so kind. That magic was incredibly powerful. She destroyed the bear in a single strike. Seeing his chance, he asked Edith directly, "Can I ask you something?" She replied, "What is it?" He said, "It's about the magic you used on the bear." Edith moved closer to him, thought for a moment, and then said excitedly, "It seems you have an interest in magic." He replied, "I've always heard magic was scary, but seeing it up close, it's really amazing." Edith replied quickly, "It's nothing special. You could easily do it too, if you just learn how. After all, anyone can wield magic." Hearing this, Anne's cheeks began to blush as he mumbled shyly, "Anyone? Then does that mean I can learn magic too?" Edith broke into a bright smile, looking straight into Anne's eyes. Then she reached out and ruffled his hair, saying, "Of course. As long as you find a good teacher, it's absolutely possible. You can become a mage too, Anne. If you wish, I can teach you magic." As she spoke, Eldred extended her hand toward Ian. "So, would you like to become my disciple?" Ian looked at the person before him, lost in thought. This could be his chance to change his life, because it meant a path other than farming had opened up for him. He decisively took Eldred's hand and declared clearly, "Yes, I look forward to your guidance." The next day morning in Ian's village, suddenly a large book slammed down on the table right in front of Ian. Eldred reminded him in a loud voice, the most basic foundations of magic lie in the Meronia language. Before that, Raven had told both Eldred and Ian, "I understand. Be careful and have a safe journey." Even the Lord had nodded in approval. Thinking of that, Eldred sighed in relief. It was so difficult to get permission from your parents and the Lord. "You must do your absolute best." Ian slammed his hand on the table and affirmed resolutely, "I'm ready." She asked him one more time, "All right, shall we begin?" He immediately replied, "Yes." Meronia language 1% in progress. Meronia language 27% in progress. By now, Ian was starting to stammer out a few words. Meronia language 53% in progress. By then, Ian had read quite a few books, and his pronunciation of the language was becoming much smoother. Later, the system announced Meronia language 99% in progress. Finally, Meronia language 100% complete. Can proficiently use the official magic language of a great mage. 7 years later, Ian gently closed the book. Eldred, standing nearby, smiled and said to him, "That concludes the theoretical studies. We're moving on to the next step." Ian, now more mature, smiled and replied to her, "Yes." Ian Everest Raven, novice mage, skill Meronia language, can use the Meronia language. A moment later, in a place of majestic cloud-covered mountains, Ian was suddenly in free fall from the sky, screaming his lungs out. He roared, "Hey, master, you're moving way too fast." For the past 6 years, all he did was study the Meronia language. Under the brilliant summer noon sun, Ian's panicked voice echoed, "Help." Seeing this, Eldred shouted instructions to him. "Listen to the sounds." Ian stammered in confusion, "The sounds." He looked around and thought to himself, "What am I supposed to listen to in a place like this? All I can hear is the wind." Suddenly, he heard some voices in his ear. "It's a human. He's flying. He's like us, isn't he?" Ian thought in amazement, this is the Meronia language. The system then displayed a status new skill acquired, skill wind magic, can use wind magic. A few hours later, Ian's curious voice rang out, the mystical things of nature. Eldred chuckled in reply, "That's right, you look absolutely ridiculous right now." He answered helplessly, Yeah, laugh all you want." Eldred continued to explain mages communicate with the mystical things of nature to borrow their power. That is what magic is. Ian mumbled with a serious face magic. And then Eldred announced loudly, "Now that you can hear the voice of the wind next, you must listen to other mystical voices." Ian replied enthusiastically, "Yes, leave it to me." Eldred yelled, "First up is water magic." In the blink of an eye, Ian was pushed into the sea. He struggled underwater while a curse rang in his ears. "You're dirtying the water, get out now." He wanted to retort, but couldn't form words, only sounds, a silent exchange. After he was done, Eldred gave the next instruction. Next is ice magic. Amidst the freezing weather and constant snowfall, Ian sat shivering in a barrel, hearing a voice in his ear, "Human, your body is getting cold." As soon as he conquered the next power, Eldred praised him. "Not bad, Ian, you grasped them quickly." He didn't even have the strength to reply. Then she snapped her fingers and shouted, "All right, next up is..." Suddenly, a great fire erupted before Ian's eyes. He panicked and shouted, "Master!" The flame saw him and cried out in surprise, "What's this? There's a human here. I wonder if it's okay to burn him." Hearing this, Ian couldn't help but scream in terror, "Help!" In the blink of an eye, the scene shifted to the inside of a dark cave. Holding a torch in his hand, Ian sighed wearily and lamented, "Earth magic, is this the last of it?" The cave then said, "Therefore that which is flowing cannot be called flowing precisely because it is not moving." Ian didn't seem to understand. He said in frustration, "What is it talking about? What kind of cosmic theory is that? Maybe I don't have any talent for earth magic. Or maybe I need to gain more experience from other training sessions." Suddenly, Ian noticed the system and cried out, "Oh, the skill panel." It read, "Bonus skill points can be used to increase magic proficiency. Current points 100. Ian revealed a sly grin and muttered, "I knew it. I'm a cheat player in this world. In that case, I'll just level up my earth magic, since I don't understand what it's saying at all." Immediately, the system flashed a ray of light right in front of Ian. The cave spoke, "Little human, beneath this place lava is flowing. Be careful, if an earthquake occurs, it will erupt." Ian said softly, "So this is earth magic. All right, I need to get out of here quickly and tell my master that I've heard the voice of the earth. Ignite." In just a moment, the torch in Ian's hand flared up brightly. However, in that moment, another voice spoke out, drawing his attention. "I hate the light." Ian looked around in alarm and shouted, "Who's there? Who is it?" The voice answered him, "No, I am the darkness." Night came, the moon was high in the sky, and the clouds drifted lazily by. Elidis sat in front of the cave entrance, musing, "I have to attend the upcoming conference of fire mages." Suddenly, Ian ran out from the cave, shouting as he ran, "Master!" Elidis looked him over, then leaped down from a rock ledge, exclaiming, "You succeeded!" Ian replied obediently, "Yes, and I also learned shadow magic from the darkness." Elidis was stunned for a moment. "What?" she thought to herself. "You're saying you heard the voice of the darkness?" The once-in-a-millennium clan. Ian noticed she was just staring at him without saying anything, and quickly asked, "Master, are you all right?" Elidis replied to Ian, "Yes. It's time for us to descend the mountain." Ian nodded and replied, "Yes, where are we going?" However, Elidis said, "That's not what I mean. I mean that we should part ways here. Go to Chronolik and attend the conference of time-space mages. If you are truly destined to wield time-space magic, you will meet a time-space mage there." Ian asked her curiously, "Why time-space magic all of a sudden?" However, Elidis just laughed and patted his head without saying anything. She smiled and thought Ian has a natural talent for the arcane. If my intuition is correct, Ian can definitely master the power of time as well. In that case, let's meet again in Donetsk in 3 years. A few days later, the cries of vendors echoed through a village at dusk. "Cheap goods here? Very cheap. Come and see, all the good stuff is here." Ian moved through the crowd, thinking to himself, "A time mage conference, huh? She is truly an unpredictable person. Everything happened so suddenly." Up ahead, a man called out loudly, "Is anyone heading north who will let me join them?" Ian thought to himself, she did say the time mage conference was being held in the north. I'm free anyway. I might as well try going there for now. Ian and Klep's group sat around a fire resting. Rick, who was beside him, found it odd and turned to look. "Hey kid, is this your first time heading north?" Hearing that, he turned his head to look over. Yes, something came up unexpectedly. The man raised a hand. He lowered his voice and asked, "Then you've probably never heard of Longshan. Have you?" Ian thought of that giant dragon's phantom and asked doubtfully. Longshan Rick's voice was firm. "Yes, in this mountain range." He remembered that colossal figure and couldn't help but add, "There are actual dragons there." Then Rick acted friendly, putting an arm around Ian's shoulder to probe. "Do you know how to fight? Or at least can you run fast?" He furrowed his brow, looking uncomfortable. "I'm not very confident in either of those." He's suddenly being way too friendly. Hearing that, the man immediately pulled his hand back, asking with annoyance, "What, are you serious? So useless. What's your profession?" Ian raised a hand to scratch his head and answered shyly, "I'm a mage." Rick's face filled with horror. He shot up and backed away a good distance. "A mage? What did you say?" He couldn't believe it and quickly tried to confirm again. "Are you serious?" The boy pressed his lips together and affirmed, "Yes." Lucy was startled and glanced over to the side, sizing him up. Carls, who was holding a cup of water, exclaimed in shock. A mage, Owen, also yelled with a look of astonishment, "Him!" Seeing this, Ian asked with confusion, "Is there a problem?" He couldn't help but think to himself, "What's with this atmosphere?" Rick quickly snatched the cup from his hand and said fawningly, "Not at all here. Let me get you some more." Ian's eyes widened as he looked over and stammered, "No, I'm fine, really." Ian stared blankly at the man's back as he rushed off with the cup. He suddenly froze when he heard a mocking laugh from behind him. "That thing is a mage." Oh Guang let out a cold, contemptuous laugh. Ridiculous. Klep also laughed loudly in agreement. "He looks so weak." Ryan smirked and raised a hand. "So noisy. If that's the case, then all the stray dogs around here are mages too." Ian looked towards the man, confused. "What's wrong with them?" Right after, Lucy came to his side and spoke softly. She raised her hand and whispered, "If you're really a mage, you should teach them a lesson to shut them up." Hearing that, Ian frowned and asked, "Teach them a lesson?" Lucy immediately sat down beside him and explained, "It doesn't matter if you're a mage or not, because these mercenaries will look down on anyone who seems gentle." She glanced towards Owen's group and added, "That's why you have to display your power to give them a scare." Lucy looked up at him and sincerely reminded him, "If you do that, they'll even come back to protect you if something happens." Hearing this, Ian looked at her in stunned silence. After a moment, he looked ahead, deep in thought. "She's right, but how should I do it? I've never been truly angry before." Nearby, Dylan spat into the bowl he had just received with a look of contempt. Next, he gently used a leaf to wipe around the rim of the bowl. When Ian saw this, he got so angry, a vein popped on his forehead. "Did he just spit in my bowl?" Dylan, who was holding the bowl, felt the ground beneath him tremble and shouted in fear, "What's going on, an earthquake?" Suddenly, he looked up in a daze when he heard Ian's voice. Ian stood right in front of Dylan with a dark expression, questioning him word by word. "Why did you dare spit in my bowl?" The man was so scared, he couldn't help but tremble. "I'm sore." Dylan trembled as he knelt on the ground, not daring to look up as he pleaded, "I'm sorry, Sir Mage." Ian's eyes rolled back in anger when he heard the man's explanation. "I just thought the bowl should be cleaned." He glared with wide eyes, hands on his hips, and yelled, "Then you should wash it with water." Hearing that, Dylan paused and asked quietly, "But isn't water dirty?" Ian was taken aback and asked, "What did you just say?" The man frowned, thinking of those rivers, and said, "It's full of lime mud and even parasites. How could I possibly use water to wash a bowl?" Ian's jaw dropped, so shocked he turned pale when Dylan added, "Saliva is much more hygienic." In the deep darkness of the forest, those words echoed endlessly in his mind. Much cleaner, so much cleaner. Jan looked at their bewildered faces and thought to himself, "Unbelievable." He stood there completely still, not moving an inch. The hygiene standards of the Middle Ages were truly astounding. Owen cautiously approached and gently touched Jan, calling out, "Sir Mage." Then he smirked and quickly chanted a magic spell. Streams of crimson light shot into the nearby bonfire. Owen's group was startled when they saw the flames shoot high into the air. The whole group stared at the fire, letting out sounds of disbelief. "What?" Nearby, Lucy also stared blankly at the fire. Jan remained motionless, ordering from where he stood, "Get me some water now." Then, unable to stand it any longer, he raised his arms and roared, "You filthy medieval people!" The soldiers immediately turned and ran. "I don't know what's going on, but it looks like he's lost his mind." Late at night, the campfire was extinguished. Everyone returned to their tents to rest. Owen led his men forward, asking, "Did Katie really go this way?" The Katie beside him smiled and said, "That's right." His face was all smiles as he imagined the two of them together. "Good this time, I'll keep Katie all to myself." Owen looked up at a dark figure in the distance and shouted, "I see her." He blushed and raised his hand, shouting, "Hey, it's getting dark, come with me." Immediately after, Owen's brows furrowed as he looked over. He let out a gasp when he saw Nathan carrying Lucy on his shoulder. Owen immediately shouted, Who are you people?" Suddenly, an arrow flew from the opposite direction, piercing the chest of the soldier next to him. Seeing him fall, Owen cursed angrily. "You bastards, how dare you do this to our men?" He drew his sword and charged forward with his men, yelling, "Kill them." Seeing this, Nathan frowned contemptuously and said, "This pathetic bunch doesn't look like much." Suddenly, Lucy, who was on his shoulder, snapped her eyes open. Then she bit down hard on Nathan's shoulder, making him cry out in pain. Nathan let go, throwing Lucy hard onto the ground as he clutched his wound. Her whole body trembling, she immediately got up and quickly ran away. Clutching his shoulder, he watched Lucy run and yelled, "The target's getting away after her." Inside the tent, Jan was lost in thought, resting his head on his arm. His brows were knitted together as he constantly mumbled, "Absolutely not." Suddenly, Jan was startled and sat bolt upright when he heard a voice call out, "Human." "You are human. Humans are coming, wake up." Jan sat on his bed, his face full of doubt. What is this aura? He looked over when he heard a call from outside Sir Mage. Rick, his face full of worry, lifted the tent flap and shouted, "We're in trouble." At night, the bright full moon illuminated the entire forest. When Jan came out of his tent, he saw people fighting fiercely. Nathan swung his blade effortlessly, finishing off a soldier in front of him. He stepped on the man's corpse and ordered loudly, "I don't care, you can kill them all." Nathan raised his sword high, looked at the men around him, and added, "Find that woman." Lucy clutched the strap of her bag, tightly hiding behind a nearby tree. Terrified, she hugged her head and crouched down in panic. "What should I do? At this rate, I'm going to get caught." Suddenly, Lucy flinched as she felt the tip of a sword pointed at her head. Victor looked down at her from above and said coldly, "So this is where you were." He curled his lip into a vicious sneer and roared, "Get up now, or I'll cut off your hand." Lucy's face turned pale, her whole body trembling in fear. "It's over." Immediately after seeing she didn't move, Victor raised the sword in his hand. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock as he looked behind him. A powerful surge of energy rushed in from a distance, knocking Victor backward. Not far away, Yihan raised his hand surrounded by the lingering remnants of magic. Lucy immediately lifted her head to look at him. Yihan quickly reached out, took her hand, and pulled her up. He gave a small smile and gently reminded her, "Stay close and follow me." Lucy looked over stunned, her lips pressed together without saying a word. A group of people lined up in a single file, their hands on the shoulders of the person in front. Rick at the end of the line raised a hand and shouted, "The mage is ready." Hearing this, Yihan placed a hand on his chest and closed his eyes. Good in that case. His lips began to move as he started the chant, "Oh Darkness." Immediately after, flashes of magical light flickered across the sky. Yihan raised a hand and streams of dark energy and blue light quickly gathered. The man saw the dark energy appear beside him and cried out in alarm, "What is this?" The entire area was enveloped in darkness, and piercing screams rang out. "I can't see anything." "Damn it, light the torches." Torches were quickly lit. In the pitch-black darkness, the screams continued to echo. "It's so hot in here." "Who is that?" "Over here." "I already told you it wasn't me." In the darkness, Yihan led Rick's group forward. "Good if we keep moving like this." Suddenly, a system window appeared. Skill activating Shadow Sight allows vision in complete darkness. Suddenly, a loud shout echoed in the darkness. "Hey!" Aaron appeared behind Rick with a torch, announcing loudly, "They're here!" He immediately raised the sword in his hand. "Where do you think you're going?" Rick's face was filled with terror, his body trembling uncontrollably. "Spare me." Yihan at the front turned his head, his eyes flashing with a blue light. Oh, scorching fire. Along with a scream, the flame from the torch erupted and engulfed Aaron completely. In just an instant, the man covered in burns fell to the ground. The remaining men saw this and froze in place, too startled to move. Yihan gritted his teeth, staring at them. This should be enough to scare them off. Immediately after, panicked cries arose. "It's a mage. There's a mage over there." Seeing this, Nathan raised his sword and led the charge forward. "Everyone attack." Suddenly, Isaac looked to the side, his face filled with horror. A long tail, two red eyes, it lunged from the right with its mouth wide open. Isaac's group froze on the spot, not daring to move. Andrea also stood frozen in fear, not daring to move an inch. Yihan also stared over his mouth, agape in bewilderment. "What is that?" He looked at the monster's glowing eyes and thought, "A Reikeg." Nathan watched as Isaac's fresh blood dripped from its mouth, letting out a whimpering sound. Immediately after, the man turned and fled. Rick pointed in that direction with a trembling voice. "Mage, look out." Yihan looked at the long-tailed monster, sighing internally. This is not good. Seeing it look his way, he thought in panic, "At this rate, I'm finished." The system sound chimed, "You have witnessed a primordial mystery." Yihan looked at the notification window before him, letting out a sound of confusion. The notification screen continued. "You have acquired the skill Summoning Art. You can now communicate with and summon mystical beings." Yihan looked at the long-tailed monster before him, wondering, Summoning Art. His brows furrowed as he speculated, "Don't tell me even that, Reikeg." Ian thought back on everything he had been through, just like the mysteries I've encountered since then. He clenched his trembling fist if that's the case. Hearing Ian's call, Rake tilted its head slightly. "Rake." Rick and the others also stared at him in terror. Sir Mage. Rake opened its mouth wide, its eyes narrowing as it stared at Ian. His face was calm as he kept comforting himself. "It's okay, I can do this." Streams of blue light began to flash from Ian's body because magic has never betrayed me. He slammed a hand on his chest and shouted, "I can do it." Immediately after, Ian pointed a finger at Rake and added, "Your friend." With a serious expression, he held up a sign and shouted with all his might, "Friends don't bully, don't fight." Rake narrowed its eyes, letting out a series of low growls. Julian looked over anxiously, whispering, "I don't know what it's saying." Rick frowned, putting a finger to his lips to shush him. "Quiet, the mage is listening." Ian stared intently at Rake, not moving a muscle. But inwardly, he was frantically clutching his head, groaning, "What is it saying?" Finally, Ian made up his mind there was no other way but to use points to level up a skill. He lightly touched the system screen. "I'll put everything into the art of summoning." A moment later, a notification immediately popped up. "Summoning ability has increased." The deep voice of Rake rang out. What Ian's eyes widened in shock, "I can hear it." He immediately looked up and called out, "Sir Rake." It instantly let out a roar. Right after, Rake opened its mouth and roared, nearly blowing Ian's group away. "If you have something to say, then say it." The corner of his mouth twitched into a smirk as he thought, "So this method actually works." Then Ian raised a hand and gently bit his nail. After a moment, his voice rang out again, "Sir Rake, I have no intention of fighting you." Rake replied with contempt upon hearing that a tiny human wants to fight me. How laughable. Ian continued without missing a beat, "That's right, we would surely be killed in an instant. To a being like you, Sir Rake, we aren't even worth your time." It listened and asked suspiciously, "Are you asking me to spare you?" Behind them, Rick asked anxiously, "Is he communicating telepathically?" Julian also looked pale, uncertain. "That's right, I can't even be bothered to kill you." Lucy bit her lip, looking over anxiously. Rake opened its mouth and continued, "That's right, I can't even be bothered to kill you." Hearing this, Ian couldn't hide his delight. "All right, this seems to be going well." But he froze when it interrupted him, however. Rake's eyes flashed with white light as it roared, "Right now, I'm in a terrible mood." Rick trembled from head to toe, looking up and shouting, "Sir Mage." Seeing this, Ian gritted his teeth, cursing inwardly. "Damn it, what do I do now?" Ian looked at Rake, thinking to himself, "So it's telling me to get out of its sight. There's no other choice, I'll have to be direct." He then looked towards it and shouted, "Rake." Ian stood still and held out a hand, asking, "Why are you in such a bad mood?" Rake asked with utter contempt, "Why should I discuss that with a human?" It listened calmly as his voice replied, "I just thought perhaps I could help in some way." Rake leaned forward, raising a claw. "How arrogant! What can a puny human possibly do?" Immediately after, Ian bowed his head and let out a powerful shout. Streams of energy poured from the sky. The water from the surrounding river and lake quickly shot upward. Lucy's group behind them felt the gathering energy, their jaws dropping in amazement. Rake also sensed the magic in the air and let out a questioning cry. On the other side, streams of white magic began to swirl around Ian. Seeing this, it opened its mouth wide and remarked, "Now this is a little interesting." Ian opened his eyes to the streams of light around him and replied with a smile, "I am but a humble mage, seeking the mysteries of the world, so I hope I can be of some small service to Lord Rock." Hearing this, the long-tailed one lowered his head and stared intently at him. After a long moment, his voice rang out, "I accept. From this point on, the negotiations begin." Inside the quiet forest, Ian looked at the long-tailed creature opposite him. His killing intent had vanished. He raised a hand to wipe the sweat from his brow, silently letting out a sigh. "At least I've escaped the immediate danger. Now it's time to show what I can do." Ian closed his eyes and stroked his chin, falling into deep thought. "It's not like I'm going to die, but I can't let him lead me around with strange demands." Suddenly his eyes shot open in surprise as he recalled that inquisitive voice. "Do you understand, Ian?" Elizabeth, resting her chin on one hand, gently advised, "You can't use magic if you can't communicate with the mystical." Ian tilted his head in confusion as he heard her add, "That's why the relationship you build with them is extremely important." Elizabeth's voice added, "Whether as friends or as subordinates, each mystical being has its own personality. For a mage, the key is to understand and empathize with their feelings." Back in the present, the corners of Ian's lips curled into a slight smile. "That's right, for a mage, the most important thing is the art of communication. All right, let's see how I can handle this rock." He glanced to the side, a pure skill panel. Immediately after, Ian exclaimed in surprise when he saw the notification panel, Advanced Summoning Technique by Demonic. Contrary to his calm exterior inside, he was jumping with excitement. This is it. Ian stared intently at the screen. On the screen were the words, "No matter what, just give them extremely strong liquor. The bigger their body, the stronger the alcohol needs to be." He couldn't help but wonder, what alcohol? Next, the words on the screen continued to flash. And then, seeing this, Ian anxiously thought, and then, the screen displayed another prompt, "Flatter them as much as you possibly can." He froze on the spot, asking dumbfoundedly, "What the heck?" Ian fell to his knees, thinking in despair, "This is bad, a loner like me can never pull this off." Sensing this, the long-tailed one wondered curiously, "What's a loner?" He immediately looked up, filled with determination. "No, first, I have to get on Rock's good side. If I can do that, it'll be a breakthrough." Seeing Ian hesitate, the long-tailed one asked, "What is it?" With a sincere expression, he said, "I have prepared a gift for Lord Rock. May I present it to you?" He looked down from above. "A gift, very well, bring it here." Without turning around, Ian shouted rich. Startled, he immediately replied, "Yes." He turned his head and urged loudly, "Go to the cart and bring the strongest liquor here quickly." A moment later, several casks of strong, colorful liquor were laid out. The long-tailed one looked down, his voice full of dissatisfaction. "What a stingy gift." Ian closed his eyes and added softly, "In the human world, the smaller the quantity, the more expensive it is." He couldn't help but raise a fist, thinking, what is he complaining about? Immediately after, he quickly poured the liquor into a large cup. Ian took the freshly poured cup and held it out towards the long-tailed creature. "Here." Smelling the rising aroma of the liquor, he used a claw to cover his nose. "What is this smell?" The long-tailed one looked down from above, emitting an intense pressure and a fierce wind. He asked, "Mage, you're not trying to pull some kind of trick, are you?" Seeing this, Ian gave a gentle smile. "Not at all. In that case, I will drink first to prove it." He raised the cup in his hand, then tilted his head back and drained it. Behind him, Rich and his men watched anxiously. After finishing, Ian wiped the corner of his mouth and said with a smile, "See no problem at all." He couldn't help but gag, thinking to himself, this stuff is seriously strong. The long-tailed one pinched his nose with 2 fingers. Even so, though the smell was pungent, he looked down at the cup. He heard Ian's voice in his ear, "Please just try a sip, I believe you will be satisfied." The long-tailed one gently lifted the cup with his claws to examine it. Then he stuck out his tongue for a tentative lick. Julian watched with a worried face, his hands clasped as he prayed silently. Meanwhile, Longtail drank the entire glass of wine, the corners of his mouth turning red. When he looked across inquiringly, a voice asked, "How is it?" He replied, "It's not exactly delicious." Hearing Longtail's next words, his eyes widened, but for some reason, it's very addicting. Ian, with a cheerful face, held up another jug of wine. "Please have some more, it gets even better from here." Longtail asked uncertainly, "Is that so?" In the darkness, the bright full moon illuminated the entire forest. Longtail, his face completely flushed, held up the wine glass he had just finished. Beside him, Ian wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief, hearing him shout, "You call this liquid wine? I like it." He looked at the empty wooden barrels before them, worried that he had drunk more than 7 barrels and still hadn't passed out. Ian, with a stunned expression, gave a thumbs up. This guy's alcohol tolerance is insane. Truly impressive. He lowered his head and gently took a sip of the wine in his hand. "I was planning to escape while he was asleep, but it seems that's not going to happen." Suddenly, Ian's eyes widened when he heard Longtail ask, "Hey human, you asked me something earlier, didn't you?" He lowered his head and said calmly, "Why am I in a bad mood?" Ian immediately replied, "Yes." Ian was startled to see Longtail's teary eyes. Why has he suddenly become so sentimental? In the darkness, his sad voice rang out, "My nest is in a bad spot, and it's more cramped than the others." Longtail tilted his head back and cried loudly. Even so, she still said it was a comfortable place. Ian was frozen on the spot. He gave him a judgmental look. "Is that so?" He wondered to himself, "He has a lover with a face like that." He lowered his head and added in a small voice, "But I don't know since when." Longtail's pained voice continued, startling him. She started being ridiculed by the others. His whole body trembled as he gritted his teeth. "Just for being with someone like me. I feel so incredibly sorry for what I put her through." Longtail's eyes flashed with a yellow light as he tilted his face to the sky and roared, "So I was the one who said goodbye." Over there, Rick's group, who had been sleeping, was startled awake. "What?" Longtail kept his face tilted to the sky, letting out continuous howls. The three of them, Rick included, clasped their hands and fell over. Ian looked up at him thoughtfully. The feelings he has for his loved one are no different from a human's. I suddenly feel a little pity for him. He touched his chin, scheming. Wait a minute, if I take advantage of this. When Longtail heard Ian call out, he looked over at Rake with a tearful face. He stood up, one hand on his knee. I will use magic to help you fix your nest. He looked over, startled, and asked, What? You'll fix it. Ian's lips curved into a slight smile as he continued, That's right, but in exchange. He put both hands on his hips, a wide smile on his face. Could you grant me one request? The next morning, light gradually illuminated the towering cliffs. Ian stood up straight with a calm expression. Rick was leaning against the carriage, talking in his sleep. Yes, I remember that too. Ian placed a finger on his forehead. Sorry. In his sleep, Rick puckered his lips and shouted, Emu. Seeing this, he became furious, a vein threatening to pop. Ian leaned in close and said coldly, If you don't wake up, I'll break your fingers. Rick's face was filled with terror when he saw him staring intently with a serious expression. He immediately scrambled back in a panic, letting out a loud scream. The vehicle lost its balance, causing Rick and the others on it to fall off. He and the others immediately sat up and looked over. Rick looked over, unable to hide his confusion. Mage, what on earth happened? Ian replied calmly. I vaguely remember Rick let out a roar. Hearing that, he continued, and then everyone passed out. Ian cursed inwardly. Damn it, I never should have picked them up. Louis Demal looked over and asked worriedly, Has Roke returned to his nest? Ian denied it. No, he's waiting up above. Rich shuddered and grabbed Julian next to him. Is he going to eat us? He replied with a serious face. No. Ian looked down at the group. He's waiting for me. I made a deal with him on the condition that I help you all. Lucy frowned in disbelief, repeating, a deal. Rich, moved, exclaimed, The mage is sacrificing himself for us. Ian frowned and turned away. Maybe I did something unnecessary. He couldn't help but think of last night's scene when he told him, Let these people go, and in return, I'll fix your nest. Behind him, Rich pointed a finger straight up, Great Mage Raven Erudition. Julian also shouted loudly, Raven Erudition. Hearing them call out, he was startled and turned his head. What is it? Immediately after a song of praise for the super cool, Master Ian began, Defeat Roke. Roar, defeat him. The voices of Rich's group rang out continuously. So cool. Scold Roke. Amazing. Scold him. They shouted excitedly, and in the end you made Roke submit. Rich's group, with tears in their eyes, raised their fists and yelled, Submit. The old man immediately stepped forward and shouted, From this day on, we live and die with the mage. We will protect you with our lives. Andrea immediately chimed in from behind. Ian stared blankly. I don't even understand what they're saying. He raised his hand and pointed at them, instructing, Get ready to leave, but don't go on ahead without me before I return. Rich placed a hand on his chest, assuring him, Don't worry, we are of one mind. Ian replied blankly, Okay. Seeing him leave, the old man immediately turned and gave orders. All right, first, let's get a head count of the mercenaries. Lucy frowned thoughtfully, glancing in the direction Ian had just left. Then she turned and headed deeper into the forest. Inside a narrow cliff face, Longtail's voice announced, This is my nest. Ian looked around the cave, letting out a cry of shock. Seeing this, he roared angrily. What's with that reaction? It's too late for regrets now. Ian frantically raised his hands in denial. I didn't say anything like that, I'm just looking. Ian grimaced as he looked around. I was already sleepy, and using the Moronius language is even more tiring. His face filled with exhaustion as he sighed. Let's just finish this quickly and get some rest. If I just push those protruding rocks in and flatten the walls, it should get much wider. Immediately after, Ian closed his eyes, sensing the fluctuations of energy. After a moment, his lips moved slightly, chanting an incantation. Oh, Earth! The Earth energy manifested and asked, Is it you again, human? Ian looked forward with a serious expression. I have a request. Her voice rang out, denied, I'm not interested, I'm busy. Seeing this, he sighed to himself. She's really annoyed with me. When Longtail saw Ian open his eyes, he immediately asked, How did it go? Ian crossed his arms and replied, Earth refuses to speak with me. I'll try again when she's in a better mood. Ian's brows furrowed deeply. I'll probably just get rejected again. Hearing this, he had no choice but to accept. If Earth has rejected you, then there's nothing to be done. Ian looked over, startled, unable to hide the surprise on his face. Longtail lowered his head, dejected. It's simple, she is not my soulmate. Thank you for trying so hard for someone like me." Ian couldn't help but want to comfort him, Longtail. He looked straight ahead and asked, "What is your name, Mage?" His voice replied, Raven Eruditian. Longtail held out a claw and said, "I am Roke the Longtail. From now on, we are friends." Ian reached out and gently took his claw, calling out, "Longtail." The two of them held hands tightly, silently looking at each other. A screen appeared with a notification. "New skill acquired, summon Roke magic. You can call upon your friend Roke. If it is for a friend's success, he will happily respond." Ian looked at the notification. "Sadly, I've gained a skill, but I never expected that I can't do anything for my friend." Suddenly, Longtail's voice rang out, causing him to look over Ian. He waved his hand, revealing a large amount of treasure behind him. "To celebrate our friendship, I will give you a gift. Choose as much as you like." He looked at the pile of gold and silver, thinking to himself, "It's just as Master said, the dragon race loves to collect treasure. It seems their relatives are the same." Ian picked up a sparkling gem. What a shame if Earth saw these, she would probably listen to me immediately. Suddenly, he froze, standing stunned on the spot. Ian had a sudden realization. Wait, if I use this properly. He immediately turned and asked Longtail, "Can I draw a few lines on the ground?" He looked over at him doubtfully and asked, "Draw." After a moment, Ian stared silently at the stone in the middle of the magic circle. He pursed his lips, thinking to himself, "I've forgotten how my master taught me." Ian looked at the light coming from the magic circle. "If the spirits are angry, you just have to make an offering using a magic circle." Longtail looked over suspiciously. "What are you planning to do?" Hearing this, he just smiled and said, "You'll see." Ian happily looked up and shouted, "Oh, spirit of the earth!" A voice echoed back through the space. "What is it, young human?" He immediately shouted, "Move the stone, flatten the walls." A blinding light radiated from the stone. Along with a faint blue light, lines of incantations began to appear. The cliff wall started to crack, then quickly pulled back. Sunlight streamed in through the opening from outside. Longtail was startled by the light shining in from outside. His eyes widened in disbelief. "This is my den." Ian looked at the incredibly luxurious cave before them and added, "It's a gift from me to you." Longtail's eyes welled with tears as he cried out, unable to believe it. Ian lowered his head proudly. It looked like he was about to cry from emotion. He looked at the beautiful cave and shouted, "It's so spacious, so beautiful." Longtail tilted his head back and took a deep breath. "And it smells nice." He glanced over at Ian and asked, "Did you create this smell with magic too?" He immediately denied it. "No." Longtail grabbed his hand with his claws and shouted, "Thank you, my friend." He lifted Ian into the air, his face beaming with joy. "With this, I won't have to be ashamed in front of her anymore. Even if we have cubs, they'll be safe here." Ian yelped in surprise. "I wasn't thinking about that." Ian replied with a resigned look, "Well, as long as you like it." A moment later, his feet were back on the ground. Ian dazedly touched his hand, wondering, "What is this?" He frantically covered his mouth in confusion. Ian saw Longtail's worried face and wondered why he was panicking. He shouted, "Hey, are you all right? There's blood." Seeing him collapse to the ground unconscious, Longtail yelled, "Ian." Longtail frantically held on to Ian. "My friend, wake up, Ian." Seeing how frighteningly pale Ian was, he panicked even more. "Oh God, what am I supposed to do?" Just then, a voice called out from the distance, "Mage." Lucy came running. As soon as he saw her, Longtail's eyes widened with suspicion. She looked up frightened. Lucy skidded to a halt, her shoes dragging on the ground. He gently laid Ian on the ground. Then he turned back to her, baring his fangs and growling threateningly. Lucy's voice trembled, but she calmly held up her hands to explain. "Wait, just listen to me. I'm Ian's friend, so please don't eat me." "All right." Longtail tilted his head, confused. "Ian, friend." Just then, Ian stirred and let out a small groan beside them. Both of them immediately turned to look at him. His eyes were still shut tight, his face twisted in pain. The sky began to darken. The small room was lit only by a flickering candle. Ian finally slowly woke up. He groggily reached out subconsciously, repeating, "What time is it? My phone." Ian's hand suddenly touched something soft next to him. He still hadn't opened his eyes, his mind fuzzy, as he wondered, "Why is my phone so soft? Did it turn into gummy candy?" His fingers unconsciously gave it another light squeeze as he thought to himself, "It's so soft, feels like a cat's paw." Just then, Lucy's voice came from beside him. "Are you awake?" Ian's eyes immediately shot open. He sat bolt upright, so bewildered that he stuttered, "Katie, why are you here?" Am I still dreaming? It feels like I'm recording a video with my phone. Lucy, looking worried, immediately advised, lie down for a little longer. You're still dizzy. Sure enough, the next second, a severe wave of dizziness hit him, making Ian clutch his head. She quickly reached out and asked, "Are you okay? Don't sit up so suddenly." He frowned and started to remember, that's right, I fainted. I pushed my summon level too far, trying to communicate with Rooney. Thinking of that, Ian slowly looked up at Lucy. Then he immediately pulled his hood down to cover most of his face, worrying to himself. Damn it, did she see everything? I'm so embarrassed, I want to disappear. After calming down, he looked around and then asked, "Where's Rake?" She hesitated slightly before answering. He left suddenly. Ian let out a sigh, guessing in his mind, did that guy go looking for her? He scratched his head in embarrassment. Sorry for causing trouble. Lucy looked at him gently and shook her head. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. Ian was silent for a few seconds, then remembered something else. By the way, how did you get in here? Isn't it really hard to get past Dragon? She seriously explained. I just said I was your friend. As if in disbelief, he repeated, a friend, how with magic? Lucy looked at him confused. What's that? Ian's eyes widened. What did she just barge in here using a translator or something? But fatigue quickly set in, and his vision blurred. I'm still so sleepy. Just then, as if gathering all her courage, Lucy spoke up. Actually, I came here knowing full well it was dangerous. Mage Ian, there's something I want to tell you. The attack last night, it was because of me. Surprising, isn't it? I'm sorry for causing trouble. Ian also scratched his head in confusion, and the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. He recalled how scared she looked that day and thought, is that why you were trembling like that? Ian cleared his throat softly. He frowned and questioned her. So you're involved with those bandits. Are you going to reveal your true identity now, too? Lucy immediately retorted, no, in what way do I look like a bandit? Ian replied seriously, a pretty face in a fantasy setting. A beautiful bandit leader is a common trope, you know. Her face flushed red with anger and embarrassment, but she couldn't argue. Finally, Lucy just lowered her head and confessed in a small voice, to be honest, this is a secret. I'm not Katie. Hearing this, an image of Lucy in a gorgeous dress making a proud declaration immediately popped into Ian's head. I am the princess of a nation. His mouth replied casually, is that so? But inwardly he was starting to panic. Don't tell me you're actually a princess. She said seriously, my real name is Lucy of the Tarian family. Those bandits were sent by my fiancé to kidnap me. Ian looked at her, the word he'd just heard repeating in his mind, fiancé. His eyes lit up. Don't tell me this is a lover's quarrel. Noticing his odd gaze, Lucy immediately denied it. What's with that look? It's not what you think. The truth is, I was planning to run far away so he couldn't find me. But after what happened yesterday, I'm no longer confident I can escape on my own. She took his hand and said with a sincere voice, so please, Ian. Help me escape, Ian asked back in confusion. Wait, hold on. What are you running from anyway? Did your fiancé do something wrong? Lucy recounted fearfully. The Tarian family is a barony ruling the lands near Alex. Our lack of knights has left us constantly threatened by outside powers. At this rate, the Tarian family will be annihilated in the war for territory. In the end, the family married me off to a knight who was a former mercenary captain. Since he was the captain of the most powerful mercenary corps at the time, the powers targeting our family began to back off. At first, even he seemed satisfied with his new status as the son-in-law of a baron. But then he started to abuse the power that came with his position. He started keeping a harem and made a complete fool of me. My parents couldn't stand it anymore and demanded an annulment. But that man poisoned my parents. As she spoke, Lucy's voice choked with emotion. She continued through her sobs because if the marriage was annulled, he would lose the power he had gained, so he poisoned my parents and silenced the servants. Ian frowned, cursing inwardly. What a monster. Lucy tried to compose herself and added, no matter how skilled he is with a sword, if he does not marry me, he is just a commoner and cannot inherit the Tyrian family fortune. That is why I ran away with the help of a servant, because I would rather die than marry a man like that. To ensure the marriage goes through, he will definitely keep hunting me down. So please, Ian, help me escape safely. Ian fell into deep thought. This situation was truly serious, and acting alone would be difficult, poisoning his own in-laws just for power. And because of that, his fiancée was now in danger of being abducted. The feeling was too complicated to describe. I will never understand the mindset of those in power during this medieval age. Lucy still gripped his hand tightly, her voice choked with emotion. "Please, I promise I will repay you. I swear on the honor of the Tyrian family." Ian scratched his head in confusion. "I mean, why me? What if I betray you?" She quickly explained, "That man is incredibly cheap. Even if you sold me out, he would only give you a few silver coins." She pressed her lips together and continued, "But as for me, I can give you everything." He repeated with a puzzled look, "Everything?" Her voice rang with determination. "Yes, if you want, I can even give you the entire Tyrian family." The air fell silent. Ian watched her quietly as his mind raced. Does that mean I could even marry her? A farmer's son becoming a semi-noble is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but if it really comes to that, then what about being Ian Erdogan Raven, the disciple of the sorcerer Erdogan? Living as a noble involved in politics is not a bad life, but having been born in a fantasy world, should I not devote myself to pursuing magic? Helping Lucy might also help me gain experience as a sorcerer, and I could earn some travel funds too. For now, I will just fight off the pursuers and see what happens after that. He cleared his throat and spoke up, honestly. You should ask someone who is better with a sword than I am, since a sorcerer is no warrior. Lucy looked terrified, her voice trailing off, in that case. At that moment, Ian suddenly shot to his feet, cutting her off. But if there is a reward, I will help you escape. You will have to deal with the consequences yourself, though. Hearing this, Lucy buried her face in her hands and began to sob. He immediately panicked. Hey, why are you crying? Did I say something too harsh? I meant that I would help you. She reached out, took his hand, and said earnestly, Thank you. Thank you so much, Ian. As she spoke, Lucy leaned against his shoulder, her tears flowing freely. Ian said nothing. He simply offered a warm, comforting hug. The sun was rising. Longtail was stretched out on the grass, soaking up the sun with a look of pure bliss. A soft sound from the cave entrance made him lower his glasses to look over. As soon as he saw why and step out, Longtail immediately piped up cheerfully, My friend, how are you feeling? He nodded, I'm fine. Then he mumbled, he's even trying to get a tan to look cool for her. Ion looked up at the sky and suggested we should head down the mountain. Soon everyone's waiting. Thanks for the gift. Longtail looked at him happily. It was nothing special. Get on, I'll give you a ride. Ion climbed on without hesitation and thanked Longtail. Louis stood beside them, looking at the two with a bewildered expression. In contrast to his earlier kindness, Longtail turned and shouted at her, Hey, Wyan's girl, you get on too. Ion shook his head to stop him. Hey, Longtail, it's not like that. He turned his head with a confused look. It's not. Louis stood frozen on the spot, her face a complete question mark. What were they talking about? While she was still confused, an arm suddenly reached out in front of her. Yan leaned slightly towards her and said gently, Get on behind me. Louis took his hand firmly and climbed on behind him. Seeing that they were both seated securely, Longtail immediately pushed himself up his face, full of excitement. All right, let's get going then. He flicked his tail back powerfully and shot off like the wind. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, Andrea looked around worriedly and urged, Let's go, we need to get moving. You saw it yourself, all the mercenaries with us were wiped out. If those bandits are still lingering around here, we're done for. Julian gritted his teeth and retorted, but would bandits really just wander aimlessly in the forest? Besides, if they had any brains, they would have retreated by now. He immediately argued back, people who become bandits don't have brains in the first place, they'll definitely hunt us down. The two argued for a while, then turned to Sir Rick in unison. What do you think? Rick was sitting silently on a large rock, his chin in his hands, as if thinking about something very serious. Suddenly, his eyes flew open. After a few seconds of silence, Rick came to a conclusion. We'll wait for the mage. Andrea frowned and asked, what Julian happily gave a thumbs up in support. Of course, we'll follow the guildmaster's decision. Rick crossed his arms and smiled confidently, thinking he even defeated a rock. There's no way he's dead. He must have run into some trouble that slowed him down. They believed it without a doubt, but 10 minutes later they were ambushed by bandits beaten black and blue and filled with regret that they should have run instead of waiting. That guy raised his hand in warning. Hey, stop your crying. I'll make this quick. The other three, with tears streaming down their faces, trembled and begged, Spare us, we'll give you anything. Hearing that the old man slowly sheathed his sword, then began to negotiate, then hand over that girl, Rick immediately froze that girl. That guy moved closer to him, his voice a threatening growl. That's right, I heard there's a beautiful woman with blue-black hair. Stop playing dumb. Rick's mouth fell open as he stammered blue-black hair. Beside him, Andrea also turned to him with a dazed look and repeated, "A beauty." At that moment, both Julian and Andrea realized it at almost the same time. The person that Guy was talking about was Katie. The guy looked down at the three of them again and asked, "Where is she?" Rick looked around in fear and whispered, "Hey, find Katie, quickly." Julian searched tremblingly. Where did she go? A few seconds later, all three of them practically shouted at the same time, "She's not here." Hearing that, the old man immediately drew his sword again, his voice turning cold. "I see." The three of them clung to each other, sobbing and begging, "Please spare us, great mage." Just then, the ground began to shake violently, and the panicked bandits turned their heads to look around. What was that? Rick was so moved he was close to tears, shouting, "The mage brought a rock, we're saved." Connor frowned in confusion, a mage and a drake. A bandit behind him suddenly widened his eyes and yelled, "Hey over there!" From a distance, Longtail was rushing towards them at a terrifying speed. He squinted, focusing on the girl on its back, and wondered, "Isn't that the girl?" The crony next to him swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "Maybe. But the thing she's riding now, isn't that a drake?" Connor's face immediately went pale. He practically screamed, "Run!" In the morning sunlight, an excited voice rang out, "I'm so glad you're okay, Kathy." Rick, with a bruised eye, held up a finger. "It's a good thing you were with a mage, otherwise those guys would have definitely done something terrible to you." Lucy couldn't help but mutter, "I think your face is the terrible thing right now." Andrea, with a hand on her hip, wondered, how did those guys know about Kathy? Hearing this, Julian gasped in alarm and said, "Now that you mention it, they were looking for Kathy as soon as they arrived. To do that, when they're also part of the Church of the Holy Angel, that's just too much." Ian, who was in the back, heard these words and thought the Church of the Holy Angel. His gaze sharpened. "It's been a while since I've heard that name." Ian couldn't help but recall the world's largest religion, the Church of the Holy Angel. Their doctrine forbids turning believers into slaves. But human traffickers and slave traders had long since abandoned those teachings. Ian crossed his arms, calculating silently. More importantly, even after seeing a mage and a drake, they still didn't give up on Lucy. He stood still, looking at her nearby. What persistent hunters do they really want to get married that badly? Ian thought of Connor's group, his face scrunching up. This is bad. At this rate, I'll be discovered sooner or later. Then he turned his head to the side. "Longtail, can you do something for me?" It glanced over and replied affirmatively. "Of course, just say the word." With a hand on his hip, Ian requested, "I want you to chase all of them away, and if necessary, you can kill them." Longtail's eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. "If it's a request from my friend, I'm more than willing." He leaned over, watching his back as he quickly moved and then disappeared. Ian stood in place, thinking to himself, "Of course, I didn't really want to say kill, but this is a medieval fantasy world where killing is commonplace. If I want to survive in this world, I have to change too." Suddenly, he flinched, letting out a painful groan. Ian brought a hand to his head. "I probably used too much of the Maryland language again." Seeing this, Lucy immediately ran to support him, concerned Ian. "Are you pushing yourself too hard?" Ian held his head and said, "I'm fine." She frowned and nagged, "You call this fine?" Rick's eyes lit up. He stroked his chin as he stared at the two of them. He looked at their close interaction and asked probingly, "You two seem really close. Are you dating?" Afterwards, Ian closed his eyes, lying in the carriage as he left with Rick's group. He sensed a flash of light, and his eyes snapped open. Ian looked at the notification. "Your Drake has just killed another person," and mused in surprise. "That makes 11 now. This automatic report from the summoning magic is really convenient, but it's a shame I can't summon it right in front of everyone." He stared intently at the notification screen before him. Suddenly, a voice called out in his ear, "Ian!" He replied softly, "Longtail." On the other end, he spat a mouthful of flames towards Connor's group, replying, "I've chased off everyone I could see." Ian crossed his arms and smiled brightly. "Thanks, you've been a great help." Longtail also gave a goofy laugh in reply. "Just making you happy is enough, my friend." In the canyon, his voice echoed, "You have to go." He answered calmly, "Yes, it's a shame, but it's time to part ways." Memories of their time together flashed through Ian's mind. "Longtail can't leave the mountain range. It's a shame we can't meet again." Longtail lowered his head and said softly, "Thank you for everything." He looked up me too. Suddenly he bowed his head, his expression urgent. "Ah, that's right. Are you interested in the mystery of the Phoenix model? Inside the castle city of Riverview, a river flows through." Ian crossed his arms, lost in thought. "A phoenix? Dorian's words echoed in his mind. He said there's an ice phoenix in the northern mountains. Maybe I should check it out. Ian recalled what he knew about them. A phoenix is a bird that doesn't disappear even in death. There isn't just the famous fire phoenix, but also the ice phoenix, the wind phoenix, and the stone phoenix. They change forms depending on their environment, known as monsters with incredibly high adaptability. Ian furrowed his brow, worried if he could even summon one. Rick's group ran up to the mage, all smiles. He held out a hand and asked, "We're about to meet the Lord. Would you like to come with us?" Ian glanced to the side, thinking, to ensure Lucy escapes safely, it's best not to attract the attention of someone as high-ranking as the Lord. Andrea also chimed in excitedly, "If you have nowhere to go, you should join us." She looked around, shyly agreeing. Right after, Lucy flinched as she felt Ian put an arm around her shoulder. He gestured towards her and said, "We will be resting at an inn before heading out." Jolie and Adrian were shocked, their jaws dropping. "We?" Lucy's whole face turned red as she looked up intently at Ian. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against his chest. I'm a little tired." Seeing this from behind, Rick was thrilled. His face flushed. He clutched his chest and laughed out loud. "They're really dating." The surrounding crowd heard the loud laughter and looked over quizzically. Lucy smiled as she watched Ian, calling out, "Pretending to date you will be more convenient, so I don't have to deal with annoying people." Without turning back, he asked, "Really?" Her cheeks flushed as she asked, uncertainly, "Hey, why do you use honorifics with commoners?" Ian replied calmly, "Because I am a commoner, a farmer's son." Lucy heard this and questioned, "But you're a mage now." Ian walked ahead, quickly adding, "There's no special reason, I'm just imitating my master." In his heart, he couldn't help but think, "I want to become someone like my master, kind and polite." Hearing that, Lucy replied softly, her eyes still following him. His voice rang out, asking, "So what do you plan to do next?" She continued in a soft voice, "For now, I plan to go see Count Katina." Lucy exclaimed with a serious face, "He's my maternal uncle. If I explain the situation, I'm sure he'll help." Ian turned his head, curious. "It sounds like your mother and the Count were quite close." She raised an eyebrow, slightly looking away. Their relationship wasn't bad. Ian heard that and stared at Lucy. If she's not certain they were close, that's a bit suspicious. He suddenly stopped and asked worriedly, "Besides your uncle, is there no one else you can trust?" Lucy immediately became flustered. "Wait, are you doubting my uncle? There's no one in this world more trustworthy than him." Ian looked over calmly. "Is that so?" He thought to himself, if she says so, he must be a good person. Lucy pulled at her lapel, looking away. "In any case, it's better than someone I don't know at all. Other people would definitely try to marry me." She leaned in close with a bright smile, teasing, "Of course, if an outstanding mage like you proposed, I'd be very happy." Ian looked away. There she goes again. Right after, he looked over with a serious face. "Our contract ends when we meet Count Katina." With her hands behind her back, Lucy pouted, "Isn't that a bit too cold? A noble is offering to marry you." Ian continued unfazed, "There are plenty of other women in the world besides you." Hearing that, she was visibly annoyed, her cheeks puffing up. Next, Lucy stormed ahead, her face flushed with anger. "You jerk!" Seeing this, he quickly chased after her. "Where are you going? The inn is this way." After a while, the bell outside the inn door chimed. As soon as Ian and Lucy entered, a welcoming voice called out, "Welcome!" He quickly went to the counter. "We'd like to stay for a few nights and use the bath." Ian placed a bag of money on the table and asked, "Is this enough?" The innkeeper looked at the gold coins in the bag, her face growing deferential. "More than enough. I'll prepare a room right away." Right after, she gestured a hand toward Lucy and inquired, "By the way, will that lady be bathing as well?" She immediately crossed her arms in front of her chest defensively. "No need, thank you." Ian frowned. "What is it? Don't tell me you also think the water's dirty." Lucy blushed. "Well, that's part of it, but—" She gripped the brim of her hat in frustration. "Do I really have to spell it out?" Ian gave her a questioning look, saying nothing. Then he walked into the medieval bathhouse, which had no partitions whatsoever. When Ian realized this, he froze in shock. He looked at Lucy's embarrassed expression and said, "Then I'll go by myself." With a tired look, she took off her cloak. "Honestly." Instantly, all the men in the room stared at her with lustful eyes. A glint flashed in Ian's eyes as he glanced around. He immediately shouted, "Lucy, put your cloak back on." She put her hands on her hips haughtily and replied, "Call me Kathy." Ian rushed over and pulled up her cloak. "Quickly, people are staring." She adjusted her cloak, exclaiming in annoyance, "Good heavens, what a bother!" Nearby, Henry and his group shot them a malicious smile. Inside the inn, voices could be heard from a room. "Did you see that woman from earlier?" Philip said with a look of utter fascination. "I've never seen such a beautiful woman in my life." Evan beside him rubbed his hands together menacingly. "She's like an angel sent from heaven." Henry, thinking of Anne's slender build, added, "There's only one guy with her, and he looks like a frail pretty boy." He suggested with a wicked grin, "How about we grab her and have some fun?" Philip immediately chimed in, "Sounds like a plan, but it doesn't look like they've booked a room for long." A smirk played on Henry's lips. "Then we'll have to make our move." Evan cracked his knuckles from behind and shouted, "Let's grab her tonight." The next morning, inside the magnificent castle, a voice inquired, "So that's it, you wish to do business here?" Once rested his chin on his hand and waved them away. "Just do your work well and don't cause me any trouble." Rick immediately knelt in gratitude. "Thank you, my lord." Kneeling on one knee, he looked up and thought, "I heard that if I can curry favor with the Baron, I might even be able to enter this castle tonight." Suddenly, an idea flashed in Rick's mind. "That's it. I should tell him about the mage." Immediately, he bowed his head and called out, "My Lord Baron, there is something I wish to report." The Baron raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Rick's eyes lit up with anticipation. "It's actually a secret, but my deep respect for you compels me to speak." Once was quite pleased to hear this. He stroked his mustache lightly. "Very commendable. Speak." Rick placed a hand over his chest and said earnestly, "The truth is, during my journey, I encountered a mage." He then began to gesture wildly. "That person went like this, and then whoosh, he did this too, and saved us." Once sat up straight, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "How astonishing." Suddenly, Rick raised a finger, his voice dropping to a low tone. "Hey, don't be amazed just yet." Because he added with a clap of his hands, "That very mage is currently staying at an inn right here in this town." Once his face instantly went pale as he shouted in alarm, "What?" He broke out in a cold sweat, unable to sit still. "This is bad. If an unpredictable mage gets angry and unleashes a drake within my domain." Once imagined why, and going berserk, unleashing the long-tailed beast to burn and kill everything in sight. His expression grew even more grim. The situation could get even worse because there was already another troublesome group in his domain. Once thought of the other group that had just arrived, the Knights of Santiago. They are people who took up arms in service of their god. They are both clerics and warriors who hunt demons and monsters instead of fighting in wars. The knightly order calls themselves the protectors of humanity. Once couldn't help but worry, but if those Knights of Santiago, and the mage who tamed a drake, were to cross paths in his domain. Once his face turned completely pale, filled with dread. Model. Immediately after, he yelled out in a panic, "Commander." Kevin immediately placed a hand on his chest and replied, "Yes, sir." Onzer pointed a finger at Rich and ordered, "Prepare a room for this man." His face was covered in cold sweat as he added, "Immediately summon the Santiago Knight Order." From outside the castle, Qatar's anxious voice rang out, "Bring them here before something happens." Meanwhile, at the inn, Ian and Lucy were eating in the main hall. Nearby, a bearded man angrily asked, "Where's my food?" Lion, looking worried, apologized, "I'm sorry, I'll prepare it right away." She rested her chin on her hand and sighed, "The bathwater isn't even ready yet." Ian immediately stood up. "Let me do it. I am here to help after all." A startled Lion asked, "Are you sure? I feel terrible, especially while you're eating." He leaned close to Lucy's ear and whispered, "Just go upstairs after you finish eating." She heard him and nodded. "Got it." As soon as Ian left, Lucy continued to eat her soup. From behind, Henry saw her sitting alone and gave a sly smile. A little while later, after finishing her meal, Lucy went upstairs by herself. With her hands clasped behind her back, she happily skipped towards her room. Suddenly, a hand reached out and grabbed Lucy's arm, stopping her miss. Henry looked at her and asked in a low voice, "Excuse me, are you the companion of the dark-haired gentleman who just went outside?" Lucy immediately snatched her arm back, demanding coldly, "Who are you?" With a look of sincerity, the man placed a hand on his chest and replied, "I'm an errand boy he hired." Then Henry held out a gold coin and added, "He told me to take you to the docks." Hearing that Lucy asked with a wary expression, I thought he was going to prepare a bath. The man quickly explained, but it seems something happened as soon as he went behind the bathhouse. She thought of Guam's men and her face turned pale. "Don't tell me those guys followed us here." Henry immediately held out a hand, urging loudly, "There's no time, please come with me." Lucy quickly followed him out. She hurried after Henry, running down the stairs. The inn door was quickly pulled open. Panicked, Lucy ran after his retreating figure. Suddenly she cried out in alarm and came to a stop. From up high, Lucy saw him sitting in the courtyard below, watching over the pot of water. Just then, Henry raised a sack high from behind her. Right after that, the inn door was quickly shut. As he was sitting in the courtyard, he suddenly heard Lucy's voice call out Ian. Confused, he turned his head to look behind him. Puzzled, Ian saw Philip raising a wooden club to strike him from behind. He immediately ducked, easily dodging the attack. The man immediately tripped over his own feet. Ian watched as Philip fell beside him with a groan. He frowned and stared at the man, thinking, it seems he's not one of her fiancé's men, just some small fry. Seeing Ian look over, Henry and Evan immediately shouted, "Hurry up!" He immediately gritted his teeth, glaring at the two as he prepared to chase them. Philip immediately stood up to block the door. "Don't even think about running." Ian put a hand on his head and sighed. Good grief, what a pain. He cursed inwardly. I lost them because of this guy. Immediately after, streams of blue light appeared. Seeing the streams of magical power, Philip screamed in terror. What is that? Ian closed his eyes, sensing the power around him, and thought, with my current strength, I can't use magic carelessly. If that's the case, among the arcane beings willing to lend me strength, I must find one I can control. From the darkness, a shadowy energy replied, Human, the fading light is the perfect time to have some fun. Let's play. Ian's eyes snapped open. That voice, darkness. Then he raised a hand high and called out, Oh, darkness. Seeing the streams of dark energy, Philip screamed in fear. What is this? He squatted down, shouting in terror. Why did it suddenly get so dark? I can't see anything. Ian's eyes flashed crimson as he replied, When I use my shadow arts only, I can see you, bastard. Immediately after, the sounds of fighting rang out along with Philip's pleas for mercy. Suddenly, the sound of a group of people running could be heard from the distance. Ian immediately looked up. Did this guy call for reinforcements? He waved his hand gently, dispelling the surrounding darkness. Ian looked down at Philip, who was sitting on the ground, and demanded, Hey, where did you take her? His face lit up with a grin as he shouted, Look, I can see again. Ian swung the wooden plank, hitting Philip hard on the head and yelling, Answer me, you little punk! Suddenly, a white blur flashed past Ian's face. He turned his head to see a dagger embedded deep in the wall. Salvador stepped in front of Ian, stopping him. That's enough, young man. His expression turned serious as the man began to question him about the darkness from before. Salvador asked calmly, Did you summon it? Ian looked at the group calmly and replied, Yes, I am the mage who summoned the darkness. Salvador and his group stared intently at him. Ian frowned, glancing at the man in confusion. His killing intent is terrifying. Who is that old man? Philip, bruised and battered, knelt on the ground and begged Salvador, Please save me. He grabbed the man's leg and cried out, That mage tried to kill me for no reason. Salvador, startled, asked what. Hearing this, dark energy began to radiate from Ian as he watched Philip cling to the man's leg, wailing. The corner of Salvador's mouth curved up slightly. I see. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked straight ahead. If he's a mage, then it makes sense. Under the afternoon sun, the pot on the stove was steaming profusely. Ian looked up and asked in a cold voice, What do you mean it makes sense? Salvador replied calmly, Aren't all mages like that? He held his head high and added coldly, People who do whatever they please. Hearing this, Ian was so angry that he began to tremble. His gaze then swept over the others. What does that old man think mages are? Ian gripped the sword in his hand and yelled, Don't talk nonsense. His face filled with indignation, he raised a fist and shouted, He attacked first. Why would I hit someone for no reason, damn it? Immediately, the entire area fell deathly silent. Ian froze, his heart pounding in alarm. Crap, I shouted too loudly. What if that old man gets angry and draws his sword? Suddenly, Salvador gave him a sharp, cold smile. He clasped his hands behind his back and said, The way you speak, you seem to be a mage of considerable skill. Dietrich stepped forward, adding with a serious face, However, that doesn't mean you're allowed to use evil arts. Ian's expression immediately darkened as he asked in a low voice, Evil arts? Dietrich immediately stepped in front of him and asserted, That's right, covering the area in darkness is to hide from the sun, the eye of the heavenly realm. Dietrich crossed his arms, a smirk on his face. Hiding in the shadows is a cowardly act. Hearing that, Ian looked up. So darkness is cowardly because it rejects the light, huh? He stared at the group in front of him, thinking, The way they use such religious language, they must be followers of the Celestial Church. Immediately after, Ian covered his mouth and let out a dry cough. He calmly asked, "Isn't the existence of both day and night the will of the heavens? If the divine will only lies in the light, then what purpose does the night serve?" Dietrich froze, stammering, "Well, that," Ian shouted with a grim face. "Just as the sun's presence creates light, its absence creates darkness. It's a law of nature. I didn't invent a rule that doesn't exist, so what's wrong with using it?" He stood frozen in place, crossing his arms. "Well, that." The people following him immediately gathered around and started to whisper amongst themselves. After a long moment, one man silently pursed his lips. Then, with a wide smile, he shouted, "It's true. No one can create darkness under the sun unless it is allowed." The man beside him also raised a fist. "I misunderstood. This is also the will of the heavens." Seeing this, Ian lowered his head and muttered curses under his breath. These medieval people are insane. He looked up at the man in front of him and asked, "May I go now? My sister has been kidnapped, and I have to find her." Philip jumped in surprise and yelled, "What, his sister?" Hearing this, Salvador's eyes filled with killing intent as he glared at the man. "So you attacked this person because you thought he was an accomplice to the kidnappers?" Ian glanced over as well. "Yes." Philip, dripping with cold sweat, denied it. "No." He hung his head under that murderous gaze, stammering, "That's not it." Salvador raised a hand and gave an order. "Dietrich, you stay here and keep an eye on him." The man placed a hand on his chest and replied, "Understood, master." He walked up to Ian with his hands clasped behind his back. "Young Mage, my apologies for taking up your valuable time." Salvador smiled brightly and offered a hand. "Allow me to help as a form of compensation." By the riverbank, Evan and Henry were trying to row the boat away. Ian led Salvador and his men in quick pursuit. A man pointed toward the boat. "That's where the witness said they'd be." The man with the ponytail angrily clenched his fist. "To think they're escaping by boat." The person beside him roared indignantly, "Such cowards." Ian glanced in that direction, thinking to himself, "The sun has set. It's dangerous to travel by boat now." In that case, suddenly a voice rang out, startling him. "Everyone!" Ian turned around with a puzzled look on his face. "What is it?" Salvador enthusiastically raised his fist high into the air. "For the sake of a stranger, let us journey together through the night. Launch the boats." The men behind him clenched their fists and shouted, "We are the Knights of Santiago, protectors of the weak. We will gladly join you." Ian turned to look at the men and thought, "So they're knights who protect the weak? That sounds pretty cool." He held up a hand to dissuade them. "It's dangerous to take a boat out now." Salvador waved his hand with a cheerful smile. "There's no need to be so formal, just speak casually." Ian paused. "But I always speak this way." Salvador kept smiling. "There you go again." Ian looked at Henry and the others and began to strategize. "I just found a hook. I'm going to pull the boat closer, when I do move to the side to avoid it." Hearing that, Salvador exclaimed in shock, "You're going to pull the boat over?" He held up a hand and asked doubtfully, "Don't you use shadow magic? How can you also use water magic?" Ian replied calmly, "I have completed the introductory levels for several different schools of magic." Salvador stared at him seriously, thinking, "This is strange. The mages I've seen on the battlefield could only use one element." His gaze sharpened. "Besides, if you're only at the introductory level, you shouldn't be able to cast spells yet, right?" Ian held a hand forward and began to chant, "Oh, river, come to me." The knights watched in astonishment as the blue light gathered. The river water immediately swelled up, rushing toward the shore. Salvador's jaw dropped in amazement. "That's far beyond any water magic I've seen on the battlefield." On the boat, Henry felt the pull of the current. "What is this? What's happening?" Evan, who was rowing, was also startled. "The current is—" Immediately after, they watched in horror as a wave rushed toward their boat. In the twilight, the boat capsized in the middle of the river. The knights gathered on the shore, murmuring amongst themselves as they stared. Just then, a tearful Lucy rushed over and threw her arms around him. Ian, from behind, Salvador's eyes widened as he demanded, "What are you doing? Can't you see your sister is crying?" Ian immediately reached out and gently patted Lucy's back. "You must have been so scared." She immediately buried her face in his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Ian looked away and let out a sigh. "I need to get back to the inn and wash up." He looked at the distant twilight and thought, "But at the time I still didn't know that a peaceful bath in this world." On the street, Balat was racing forward on his horse. "Emergency, clear the way." Loud shouts rang out. Everyone returned to the inn immediately, was something Ian would never be able to have. Harris saw white smoke rising in the distance, smoke that was definitely from a battle. His face filled with worry as he spurred his horse toward it. Could the Lord's fears have come true? Harris glanced at Banat beside him and sighed internally. Just having to bring this inexperienced young master along was a headache. He lowered his head and could only let out a sigh. At the source of the white smoke, loud noises rang out. "Let me scrub your back, sir. I'll get this side then." Yi-an, sitting in the hot water, replied, "It's so noisy." Right after that, the door to the room was thrown open from the outside. Banat immediately rushed in. "What are you doing?" Yi-an looked up with a blank expression, taking a bath. He and Hodgson heard this in disbelief, shouting, "Taking a bath." Banat glanced at the boiling pot of water. In a place like this, people of the Empire rarely bathed unless it was a special occasion. His eyes gleamed, and with the surroundings in such a mess, something was definitely up. As the Lord's eldest son, I have the right to a report. Banat walked over excitedly. "Hey, explain this to me right now." Sanvata bowed with a hand on his chest and replied with a smile, "Lord Banat, I am Ruda. Please allow me to explain." He crossed his arms, asking unhappily, "Why you?" I was asking him. Hearing this, the man was startled and asked, "What?" Sanvata lowered his head and explained in a low voice, "That's because he is a mage." Banat exclaimed in shock, "A mage? What did you just say?" A moment later, an idea flashed through Banat's mind. Is he going to do it? Banat placed a hand on his chest and arrogantly demanded, "Mage, I am the heir of the Khan family. Get out of that bath immediately and bow to me." Yi-an instantly remembered a noble custom in this world called provoking mages. Simply put, it's when nobles intentionally provoke mages to test their strength. A mage who remains calm when provoked is considered weak, while one who gets angry is considered truly powerful. Yi-an rested his arms on the edge of the tub, thinking, "Wait, is this that mage-provoking thing Lucy was talking about?" He crossed his arms, looking down at him, and refused no. Banat's face twisted immediately as he yelled, What did you say?" His whole body trembled as he roared in anger, "You dare refuse me!" Banat approached, shouting furiously, "Someone like you dares to defy me!" Yi-an asked calmly, "Why should I do as you say?" He immediately struggled and ordered Hodgson drag that fake mage out of there right now. Seeing Banat being pulled back by Hodgson, Yi-an praised under his breath, "Not a bad act." Then he sighed to himself, "All right, if that's how it is." Yi-an's eyes flashed with a cold light as he asked again, "Fake, what did you say?" Banat looked at the flashes of light appearing all around, terrified. "What is this?" Yi-an raised a hand rise. All the objects around him immediately flew into the air. Banat raised his hands frantically, admitting his mistake. "Stop it. I've seen enough of your power. I apologize for my rudeness." A moment later, in the blink of an eye, all the objects fell to the ground. Yi-an let out a quiet sigh of relief and stretched, thinking, that should be enough to cure him of that habit. He was stunned when he saw Banat collapse on the floor, wailing loudly. Yi-an's face froze as he stared blankly at the scene. "This is bad. Did I go too far? What if the Khan family gets furious and has me executed?" The next day, inside the magnificent castle of the Khan family, sunlight streamed in from outside as his voice rang out, "Thank you for accepting my invitation." Once recalled the scene of Banat hiding in his room crying and spoke up, "And I heard my son caused you some trouble yesterday." His face was weary as he picked up his teacup and sincerely apologized. Hearing this, Yi-an quickly replied, "No, I should also apologize for going too far." Once looked across doubtfully. "By the way, I heard you have a companion. Did you come alone?" He replied calmly, "She had something to take care of at the inn." Yi-an's mind flashed back to the scene before he left. There's no need for Lucy to show herself. Sanvata had assured him with a bright smile, "We are taking very good care of your sister." Inside the magnificent white room, a crisp sound rang out. So he looked at him seriously and asked, "By the way, may I ask the name of your master?" Ian answered casually, "It's Lady Aladis." Hearing this, Once was startled and exclaimed, "I've heard of the rising star Raqqa. Did your master go south?" Leaning against the sofa, he confirmed, "Yes, because that's where the Magic Academy is." He asked again in surprise, "So she didn't go towards the Duchy of Banga or the Duchy of Daklung, did she?" Ian's face tensed up. "What do you mean?" Once thought for a moment before continuing, "The situation has been quite tense lately." He immediately turned at the sound. He added, "It seems the Duchy of Banga is targeting the Duchy of Daklung." Hearing this, Ian couldn't help but worry. Does that mean there might be a war? Once looked at him coldly and asked, "Are you also going south?" His eyebrows furrowed as he denied it. "No, I'm going east to seek the arcane." He held out a hand, I see. In that case, allow me to give you a gift. Ian looked over his face, full of questions. A gift. He looked at the tightly locked wooden chest on the table. What is it? Once pointed at the wooden chest and said, "Open it and see." Ian gently reached out and opened the lid of the wooden chest, looking inside. Immediately after, his eyes widened in shock. "This is a staff." Once his voice rang out explaining, "That is a staff once used by a wind mage." He looked calmly at the wooden box and added, "Its name is the Windwalker." Ian stared at it, unconsciously repeating Windwalker. He immediately reached out and gripped the staff inside. Seeing Ian grasp the staff tightly, once smiled in approval. "It suits you." He looked it over for a moment. It looked like an ordinary staff, feeling like he'd just received a mage's starter equipment. The corners of Ian's lips tightened slightly as he thought happily, but it still feels good to receive a gift. Once crossed his arms and laughed loudly. "This is a token of my gratitude for overlooking my son's rudeness. Do you like it?" Ian gently stroked the staff and replied, "Yes, thank you." Inside the castle, Ian expressed his sincere thanks. "I accept it with gratitude." That afternoon, a loud shout echoed from outside the inn. Ian. Grabbing the staff, he ran out, startled. "What's wrong?" Lucy, her face full of worry, grabbed Ian's hand. "It's urgent." Her voice was filled with urgency. "We need you." Seeing the creature in front of him, Ian frowned in confusion. "A crow." Jean and Doe approached and said loudly, "A hunter caught it this morning. He was going to eat it, but your companion stopped him." Lucy grinned excitedly like a child. "You're Ian Eric Raven, and this is a crow. Don't you think it's some kind of destiny?" After hearing that, Ian's gaze towards her grew even stranger. Seeing his silence, Lucy pressed on playfully, "See, it's destiny, right?" Ian sighed and coldly turned away. "Sorry for the trouble, just go ahead and eat it." Her voice rose in frustration. "Hey! You speak so disrespectfully. I'm the mage here, not you, right? What are you even talking about?" As if waiting for that arsenal, snatched the crow's cage. "Thanks for the confirmation, then we'll eat it for lunch." But as he turned to leave, Ian suddenly heard a desperate cry. "Please save me, kind human." He spun back around immediately. "Wait." Ian quickly used magic to speak with animals. "What are you?" The crow Oberon cried and wailed, "Please save me." Ian kept trying to communicate with it under everyone's strange stares. "Answer me. What are you?" But it only repeated one sentence, "Please save me." Seeing this, he fell into deep thought. It seems it doesn't understand the Maryland language. Perhaps it lacks arcane power. But Ian didn't give up on talking to it. "Hey, crow." Oberon was busy screaming its head off. "Please help me, don't kill me." Despite being talked over, he remained patient. "I'll help you, so be quiet first." However, it didn't understand and shrieked even louder, "Please." At this point, Ian completely snapped. So he yelled even louder than it did. "All right, I'll help you, so shut up." Only then did Oberon finally quiet down. Seeing that a smirk unconsciously formed on Ian's lips, this guy might not understand words, but he gets the situation. Beside them, Adrian and Diego watched in awe. "Sir Mage, are you talking to the crow? That's incredible." Ian relayed its words. "Yes, it says it wants to be saved. For now, just leave it to me." Hearing that, Lucy puffed out her chest proudly. "See, I told you this crow was special." Salvador gave the gentle smile of an elder. "It seems the young lady can also see the arcane just like you." She held her head so high it nearly touched the ceiling. "Well, I've never studied it, but I guess I just have a knack for it." Mage Ian could only roll his eyes helplessly. "Here we go again." After that, he took Oberon away and bandaged its wound. Ian looked at its silly expression and smirked. That should do it right. Lucy kept her eyes glued to the crow. "Yeah, it'll get better soon." Suddenly, her face fell. "So what are you going to do with this crow? Give it back to the hunter." After everything that happened, Ian couldn't bring himself to do it. It would just get eaten. As if it understood, Oberon suddenly hopped onto his hand. Then it began to beg pitifully, looking no different than a puppy. "Please don't abandon me. The humans here are terrifying." Tears streamed down Oberon's face like rain. "Please." Ian's brows furrowed. What a pain. Ian said nothing more, simply placing Oberon on his shoulder. Seeing this, Lucy's eyes lit up. "Are you going to take it with us?" He gave a slight nod. "I'm just planning to keep it for a while at least, until it's fully recovered." She was excited like a child again. "Then we have to name it." Ian hadn't considered this and was momentarily taken aback. A name. Lucy moved closer and suggested cheerfully, "How about we call it Obsy because its eyes are jet black?" Seeing the crow fawning over her, he felt a wave of helplessness. This guy is loving the attention from Lucy. But Ian couldn't be bothered to remember that, so he immediately corrected her. "It's too long. Let's just call it Oberon." She was just happy to have a new companion, so she readily agreed. Okay. He reached out and gently stroked Oberon's head. From now on, your name is Oberon. A second later, it flapped its wings and announced in a booming voice, "Bring forth tribute and receive my grace." Ian didn't bother to hide his disgust, getting arrogant all of a sudden. I guess that means it's happy. Suddenly, Lucy took the initiative. "Oh, right, Ian, I was thinking maybe we should travel with the knights." He looked at her intently. The knights. It was clear she was a little worried about the journey ahead. I think it would be better than going alone. Ian immediately pictured the brawny figures of those men. That makes sense. Bandits wouldn't dare attack us. But what if they're not going in the same direction as us? As if sensing Ian's hesitation, Salvador pushed the door open and entered. "What are you worried about?" He was startled. "Elder." He sat down across from Ian. "Even though you're a mage, traveling alone with a young woman is still dangerous. How about we make a deal?" He was a bit confused. A deal. A gentle smile played on the older man's face. "That's right. We're actually on our way to exterminate a monster that's appeared in the Southern Territory, Katina." Hearing that word, Ian immediately tensed up. A monster. Salvador's voice suddenly grew somber. "Have you ever heard of a creature called the manticore? It's a monster that has the form of a giant lion, a beast notorious for its brutality and bloodlust." Ian was starting to get the picture. "Don't tell me you want me to hunt the manticore with you." But Salvador shook his head. "No, we don't want to drag you into danger. Of course, if you want to help, we won't object." After hearing him out, Ian was silent for a long time. A moment later, he suddenly stood up from his chair. He started to walk away with a glare. "Then I refuse." Salvador laughed quickly, grabbing his shoulder. "At least hear me out. What we need from you isn't hunting." Ian sat back down. "Then what?" Salvador slowly began to tell him about their background. "The truth is, we are an order of knights established by the Holy Church. However, when we said we were going to hunt the manticore..." A sorrowful look crossed Salvador's face. "It seems the priests in the Count's territory have forced a mage to assist them. That's probably made things difficult, so we want you to act as a mediator with that mage. A mage's word carries more weight than a knight's." Hearing that, Ian just lowered his eyes and thought, not bad. As long as the mage was kept happy, he would have a knight escort. After some consideration, he finally agreed. "Then let's go together." This might have been the best decision Ian had ever made. Traveling with the Knight Order was truly comfortable. The members of the Santiago Knight Order were all good people. They were also strong enough that Ian didn't have to lift a finger, so there was no pressure at all. But if there was one thing to complain about... While Ian was eating grilled meat, Dietrich suddenly called out loudly, "Sir Mage, would you like to study the Holy Scripture?" The other two knights immediately chimed in enthusiastically, "Study with us. I'll join too." But of course, Ian bluntly refused. "No thank you." The three of them shouted in unison, "Why not?" He paid them no mind and focused on eating. Although it was comfortable, they kept trying to drag him into their religion. Salvador chuckled and sat down across from Ian. What a pity. Chewing on his meat, Ian asked doubtfully, "Why is that?" He had seen the potential in Ian early on. If he had agreed, he could have become a priest of the order. Hearing that, he fell into thought again. The voice of God. If I could really talk to God, maybe I could ask why I was reincarnated and about the status window. After thinking it over, Ian went up to Dietrich, "Sir Dietrich, about studying the Holy Scripture, may I join as well?" That whole night, he taught Ian with great dedication. He studied with great focus, seeming to never tire. Just then, a gentle voice rang out, "A very good attitude." Ian didn't even bother to look up. "Yes, thank you for the compliment." Hearing this, Dietrich's eyes widened in surprise. "What are you suddenly talking about?" Ian had no idea what was going on. "Didn't you just say I had a good attitude?" The man was scared out of his wits. "I didn't say anything." "Did you hear something?" Sir Ian thought he was just tired and imagining things, but I clearly heard someone speak. Just then, a thought crossed his mind that wasn't a human voice. That voice rang out again, tinged with a bit of amusement. Who knows? Ian suddenly shot up, startling Dietrich. That voice was still echoing in his head. "Am I perhaps not what you would call human?" Ian pointed to the sky and shouted, "You're God, aren't you?" A giant vortex above suddenly spoke. "I suppose so." He angrily gritted his teeth, speechless. "You." Ian refused to give up questioning relentlessly. "What is that status window? Why did you reincarnate me into this world?" But the only response was mocking laughter that echoed through the air. He roared in frustration with all his might. "Answer me." Suddenly, a stream of blue light shot down and passed right through Ian. The sky then became clear again, just as it was before. His face darkened as he realized something was wrong. "Don't tell me." Ian felt dizzy, a sense of loss washing over him. "You really left, didn't you?" He growled, the veins on his forehead popping. "Hello?" Getting no answer, Ian jumped up in anger. "Hey, God, get back here!" The knight beside him quickly held him back. "Hey!" While Ian was still struggling, I said, "Get down here." Now, the other knights also joined in to restrain him. "Please calm down. Hey, what's going on?" After that, he joined them in studying the Holy Scripture. Did the Creator, also known as God, throw me into this world just to watch and laugh? Ian received no answers and could only curse, "Damn it." He wanted to ask God directly, but Ian's holy arts level was too low for a conversation. He had no choice, and Ian quietly left the spot. I have to find more ancient points just so I can talk to that damn God again. And as a result, he obtained a new skill, holy arts skill, the ability to converse with the elegant, noble, sacred, beautiful, and absolute ruler of this world. Well done, Ian. And punishment came swiftly. You must pay more attention to theology and understand him better. The more you care, the happier the God will be, the elegant, noble, divine, and beautiful ruler of this world. Tears welled up in Ian's eyes as he closed the book. Is this really the God who gave me this skill? Meanwhile, Salvador was swinging his sword to cut down an intruder. With just a single strike, he fell to the ground. Covered in blood, he glanced at those nearby. "Hey, new mage, is everything all right?" Ian timidly raised his hand, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes." But looking at the wounded people lying on the ground, a sense of fear washed over him. "Of course it wasn't. Because you've completely wiped them out." Salvador looked over at a stammering Lucy. "You're not hurt, are you?" Her voice faltered. "I'm fine, but what about you, Elder?" As night began to fall, Ian looked up at the starry sky and upgraded his holy arts. A few days later, as the first rays of sunlight shone down, the sound of clashing swords echoed in the forest. Down below, both sides were locked in a fierce battle. Salvador raised his sword with a triumphant look on his face. "We have annihilated the evil bandits." The soldiers under his command roared along with him, their morale high. Jason led the way. "Master, the path splits in two here." He seemed very familiar with this route. The east path leads to the Count's castle, while the west leads to the forest where the manticore has appeared. Salvador pointed in one direction. "The forest where that mage lives is this way." Then he waved everyone over. "Let's go, Ian." He suddenly hesitated. "Please hold on, wait a moment." Salvador seemed to understand Ian's concern and reassured him. "No matter how old I get, I won't lose to something like this." As if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, he spoke more freely. "I heard you used to be a mercenary. That's amazing." He gripped his sword hilt with a confident look. "I may not look it, but I was pretty famous back in my youth." Then Salvador swung his sword with an imposing presence. "That's why I use the title of Elder. There are too many fools who just hear my name and try to pick a fight." Ian's gaze lowered in thought. So he's so famous that everyone recognizes his name. He then turned to a shy Lucy beside him. "Lucy, should we go see the mage first and then head to the Katrina territory?" But she refused. "No, I'll go on ahead." Ian's face was filled with worry. "Will you be okay by yourself?" To put his mind at ease, she smiled and quickly turned to leave. "I'm not a child. This way is a shortcut to my uncle's place." Lucy even gave a cheerful wave. "See you later, Ian." Watching her leave, he still felt a knot of anxiety. Will she really be all right? Ian kept his eyes on her, vowing to finish this quickly and catch up with her. They received brand new sets of armor and full equipment. Castro scratched his head and looked away sheepishly. "It's because we accepted money from the church." "No wonder everyone is wearing such nice armor," Ian thought to himself. He threw an arm around his shoulder familiarly. "But we're not going to die. They'll probably spare us out of respect for you, Ian." He paused to think. This is the first time I've met a mage besides my master. I don't know if this will be okay. He had good reason for these thoughts, because all a mage needs is a single curse. Just a curse alone was enough to bring death upon the beasts. Noticing Lucy was gone, Salvador asked, "Where did your sister go off to by herself?" He replied calmly, "Just for a bit, I'll catch up with her soon." Ian moved on to a more pressing matter. "We're about to meet that mage now, right?" He put an arm on Ian's shoulder with a sly grin. "Are you mentally prepared?" Ian looked annoyed. Mentally prepared. Salvador's smile vanished, and his tone grew serious. "Mages are unpredictable, right? They're upset with the church, so who knows what they might do?" Ian shot him a questioning look. "Why do we have to clean up the church's mess?" Salvador's face went pale and he started to sweat bullets. Oh well. He recalled an image of the witch Manny Campbell, a wood element mage engrossed in making a stew. That looks delicious. Suddenly, someone burst in with his men. Mage Manny, please help our order of knights defeat the manticore. He radiated a menacing aura. Don't forget this is an official request from the Church Manny model. Looking at her jaw with only a few teeth left, and her skin, wow. She stirred the pot continuously. If you want my help, you should at least eat the food I make and act like you enjoy it. Shouldn't you, Ian? Ian followed San and Du to a house deep within the herbalist's forest. He nodded in confirmation. Yes, Mandy Campbell is a famous herbalist. The reason for that is simple. Not only can she control plants, she can also concoct incredibly terrifying poisons from them. Upon arriving, San and Do carefully reminded him, "This is perfect since we need a deadly poison to hunt the manticore." Suddenly, a strong smell hit their noses. What's that smell? Ian stopped. Another surprising beat. Wait, this smell is... Inside the small house in the forest, the aroma just kept spreading, and then... Suddenly, Mandy appeared in the flesh with a shrill laugh. "I've been waiting for you, Santiago warriors." Just then, San and Du frowned slightly at Mandy Campbell's welcome. Mandy just casually invited them. "I'm so glad you've come." Her eyes went to the pot of stew on the table. "Come on, enjoy the feast I've prepared." A moment later, Ian's group was inside Mandy's house, and each of them was served a bowl of stew with a foul odor. "This smell is too strong," San complained, still not taking his hand away from his nose. "You don't have to prove your strength this way." She sighed as if to explain, "I'm simply treating guests to a rare dish made from plants I've painstakingly cultivated." But a second later, she provoked them, "And if you're not guests, you can leave." These words left him speechless for a moment. On the other side, Luis had to pinch his nose to even take a spoonful, while Marcel, beside him, only dared to sit and stare. He couldn't hold it in and threw up a few times, all of which Mandy saw. Did I go a little too far? Her thought suddenly stopped when her eyes shifted to Ian. Hey, why is that guy eating so much? He's eating as if he's never had such a delicious meal before. Who is that gulping down a bowl of soup full of garlic like that, out of sheer curiosity? Mandy quickly went over to ask, "Are you all right?" Ian didn't forget to grab a chicken leg as his eyes lit up. "This is delicious." These words stunned her for a second. Delicious. An existential doubt rose within her. Impossible. He picked up a whole, unpeeled clove of garlic and exclaimed, "That's right. This garlic is especially good." As he spoke, he immediately popped it into his mouth. The people watching froze, including Mandy. She ran over, grabbed his shoulders, and screamed, "Stop. I've been an herbalist for 40 years, and I've never seen anyone as strange as you." Ian's eyes widened in confusion. Strange Mandy crossed her arms, her gaze becoming scrutinizing. "What is your name?" He didn't hide it, stating his full name directly, Ian Erdogan. Hearing that name, she was startled. Alarmed Erdogan, Mandy's finger trembled as she pointed at Ian. "Then you are the next question," was articulated very clearly by her, the disciple of Archmage Arendir, and so the story was told until night fell. "Please forgive me for testing you." Mandy's voice had become much gentler. "As an apology, please eat as much as you like." Ian glanced at the plate of food on the table. The chicken stew really was delicious. Just then, she brought up the main topic. "So you plan to hunt a manticore?" Someone confirmed. "That's right." Instantly, Mandy's expression darkened. "It won't be easy, because, according to some rather reliable information, Count Katina sent hunters to capture the manticore, but they were all killed by that monster. Unexpectedly. San and Du were so determined. "We have prepared ourselves." Mandy asked in return, "Have you ever hunted a manticore?" He replied in a deep voice, "A few times when I was young." She continued, turning towards Ian. His eyes held a hint of surprise. They narrowed dangerously. "Having been taught by Eric, you must be a talented mage by now, right?" She made a suggestion. "Why not lend your wisdom to the council?" A memory flooded back into Ian's mind of what a mage should do. Someone's voice echoed in his memory. "That's right. Every mage will have to interact with others at some point, even if they don't want to." He advised with a smile, "You must never take that moment lightly." Back in the present, he was quite troubled. "Of course, I don't have to go catch the manticore myself, but if I refuse, unpleasant rumors might spread within the Mage Association, because the Mage Association is an organization founded by mages led by the Magic Academy to ensure the proper use of the arcane." The more Ian thought about it, the more difficult it seemed. If this happens, I'll lose face in front of my master, and I might not be able to ask other mages for help when I need it. He glanced at the group of people beside him. Every one of them was placing their trust in Ian. I have no choice. So he quickly made a decision. I will go with you. The next day, in the somewhat quiet forest, San Paulo and Ian led the group deeper inside. The air was a little tense. Louis must be hoping she is all right. Just then, Oberon flapped his wings and flew back to report, "Master, I found it." It landed on his shoulder and added, "The manticore is over there." Salvador, standing nearby, seemed a little worried. "Ian, is something wrong?" Ian pointed to Oberon before answering, "According to this little guy, it's this way." Now Salvador and the others looked at it with new eyes, an incredible ability. As for him, he glanced at Oberon as it chirped on his shoulder. I made it understand human language using necromancy and summoning magic. It all happened in a flash. They continued down the path Oberon had indicated. "I can feel a very strong killing intent suddenly," Ian spoke up curiously. "Elder, may I ask you something?" He replied calmly, "What is it?" He quickly asked his question, if the manticore is also a monster. Ian frowned slightly and paused for a beat. "Can I persuade it?" Salvador, after a moment of thought, answered with just 2 words, hard to say. Mani then added, "Manticores are not the kind you can talk to." His expression turned grim. What does Mani know about summoning magic? She got so angry she practically jumped. "I know what the arcane is." And so Mani made a threat. "If you really manage to persuade it, I'll tell Eric." However, that made no sense. Why would she tattle to my master instead of praising me? Just then Dietrich shouted loudly, "Master over there." The whole group immediately looked in the same direction. What met their eyes was the killing intent coming from the glowing eyes of the manticore. Over there, Salvador and the others were staring deep into the forest. "It's looking this way." At this moment, Ian was a bit tense. Salvador continued to instruct, "You two stay by my side." Mani quickly replied, "Understood." Suddenly, Ian called out, causing Salvador to whip his head around Master. A soldier came up to him and reported, "I have coated all the weapons with poison." He then presented 3 arrows drenched in a poison specially prepared by Mani. 2 seconds later, Salvador decisively shot the 3 arrows deep into the forest. Watching this, Ian remained silent, his thoughts unreadable. The arrows were whizzing forward. Suddenly, Ian felt a stinging sensation all over his body, and his eyes turned completely white. The arrows that hit the manticore's body bounced right off. Ian walked over and announced, "The arrows hit its neck and bounced off." Salvador said in confusion, "Impossible." The bewildered soldier asked Master, "What should we do now?" The manticore stepped out of the darkness. Its eyes flashed as it spoke with a grin, "Time for another round." Fear crept into Ian's heart as he looked at the beast. Its laughter sent shivers down his spine. Just then he realized the manticore was right in front of him. It was too late to react. Ian clenched his fists. "It seems I have no other choice." The next moment his demeanor turned fierce as he let out a furious roar. Everyone behind him was stunned, unable to comprehend what was going on. The manticore watched his retreating back and thought the kid actually did it. Before everyone's eyes, the manticore suddenly fell silent. A moment later, it slowly stepped forward and praised him. "I never thought a human would dare to approach me, that's rare." Hearing that, Ian felt a bit relieved, telling himself to stay calm, as he had before. Then he held out his hand and spoke. "You are one who can understand me. I am Ian, a magician." But the manticore just bluntly retorted, "Piss off." Those words left Ian stunned, his body frozen in place. The next moment, the manticore shamelessly threw filth on Ian's head. "Eat this, you foolish human." Ian froze, his face darkening as he couldn't stop himself from asking, "What the hell is your problem?" The manticore nodded in approval. "That's more like it." Dropped the respectful tone. It narrowed its eyes and growled, "If you want something from me." Ian tensed up as the manticore continued, "Spit it out." At this, Ian no longer hesitated, pointing at the beast and saying, "Your scalp." After that, only the manticore's excited laughter echoed through the deep forest. Seeing Ian's stunned expression, it praised him with amusement. "You're blunt, I like that." The next moment, the manticore bared its sharp teeth and proposed, "Magician Ian, how about you and I team up and slaughter these humans?" Ian's eyes widened in shock. "What?" The manticore lost itself in the fantasy. "Craving fresh blood, I'll feast on their flesh." It painted a tempting picture for Ian, "And you will have gold and women." The manticore continued coldly, "And when you get tired of the women, I will kill them." Finishing its sentence, it licked its lips in a disgusting manner. "It'll be fun." Hearing this, Ian was at a loss for words. Unbelievable. He then spat contemptuously at the manticore's feet. That's just disgusting. He didn't stop there, even flipping his middle finger at the manticore, you bastard. This made the beast only able to utter, "You." The soldiers witnessing this were just as bewildered. The manticore drew itself up to its full height and said coldly, "Very well then, for that alone." In a flash, it charged straight towards Ian. The manticore roared furiously, "You're only worth killing." Ian froze, only then realizing it was speaking the imperial tongue. Manny gave the command, "Rise." She stomped her foot firmly on the ground. A glowing sprout immediately shot up from the ground. In an instant, sturdy branches shot out from the sprout, entrapping the manticore. Manny narrowed her eyes, watching closely. After a moment, the beast was completely engulfed by the sturdy branches. Seeing this, Sanvador shouted in alarm, "Manny, what did you do?" Manny replied nonchalantly, "Are you blind? I bound the manticore." Sanvador pressed on, "You caught the knight standing nearby as well." Despite her slight hesitation, Manny stubbornly replied, "Get serious, you're not children anymore. Deal with it yourselves. Killing and eating the manticore is our priority." Suddenly, Sanvador saw something that made him look up in alarm. He started to move. Then Sanvador ran straight inside. Confused, Ian called after the elderweight. Sanvador ran over and asked worriedly, "Hey, is everyone all right?" Ian also arrived just in time, drenched in sweatmaster. The soldiers stammered, "We're fine, but..." Ian's eyes widened in horror. Dietrich lay on the ground, his body covered in injuries and wrapped in bandages. As Sanvador helped him up, Dietrich struggled to get the words out. "I'm sorry, master, we let Matiko get away." But Sanvador immediately scolded him. "What are you talking about?" This scene moved Ian slightly, and he pressed his lips together tightly. His hand suddenly clenched into a fist. Sanvador's encouraging words continued to ring out, "You all did your best." Ian once again recalled Dietrich's respectable moments and sighed to himself. "I never thought I would witness a death with my own eyes. And it had to be Dietrich now, I can truly feel it." In his mind, he pictured a scene of rampaging beasts. This is a world where monsters and martial artists are an everyday affair. They plunged everything into a sea of fire. A death that I had previously only seen in stories. That story has now become a reality before my very eyes. After thinking for a long while, Ian quickly walked over to the others. He sat down, took Dietrich's hand, and called out softly, "Dietrich." Ian gave a warm smile and recalled his past words. "You told me this when you were teaching the Holy Scripture, right?" Under the vast blue sky, Dietrich's words resonated deeply. "Trust from the bottom of your heart and pray, and Tian Kong will open up." Hearing these words, a tear rolled down the man's right cheek. A moment later, a mystical light filled the area around them. "Let us pray together." Ian's eyes lowered slightly, and he whispered, "Almighty Tian Kong, are you watching?" Sitting beside Dietrich, he continued to mumble, "Your most ardent follower is here, and he's about to die. Aren't you going to do anything?" Suddenly, a brilliant cluster of light appeared and spoke. "Your Tian Kong is right here, Ian." Before Ian could understand what was happening, Tian Kong continued with an offer. "If that's what Ian wants, shall we give it a try?" Then, in an instant, the cluster of light in the sky became dazzlingly bright, illuminating the entire region. Seeing this, Sanvador smiled and called out Ian. By this time, Ian had let go of Dietrich's hand. Sanvador hesitated. As the blue light gradually faded, Ian stared in shock at his own glowing palms. A deep, warm, and sweet voice entered the man's subconscious. "Wake up, Dietrich." A magical light surrounded the goddess. She slowly extended her hand forward, as if to help him. Dietrich was astonished, his eyes wide as he murmured, "Goddess." His mind was filled with thoughts. "It's so good to see you." But the more this happened, the more Dietrich trembled in disbelief. Why is the goddess here? So this is the heavenly realm. She closed her eyes, sensing his anxiety, and gently instructed, "You still have work to do." Dietrich quickly sat up, bewildered and confused. "Work I have to do." The goddess gently extended her arm in the sparkling light, showing him the way. "Spread my will even further. Help the weak, bring them happiness." Dietrich's eyes hardened, completely shocked by her next words, "and assist my apostle Ian." A brilliant light gradually appeared before his eyes, along with a final message, "That is my will." The very next second, Dietrich awoke from the illusionary dream. His vision was blurry, slowly making out familiar faces. Louis was the first to notice. He's awake. Sanvador, also astonished, quickly called his name. "Dietrich, are you awake?" Dietrich's entire body was soaked in blood as he awoke in a panic. "Where is this?" While he was still dazed and confused, a voice called out from a distance. It was Ian holding a staff with a teasing smirk. How does it feel to come back from the dead? The moment he saw him, Diego couldn't hold back his tears and rushed toward Ian. He was startled too. What are you doing? He knelt at his feet, filled with gratitude for this act of grace from Ian. You saved me according to the will of the Great One, didn't you? He glanced at the kneeling man, looking a bit awkward. But in truth, Ian couldn't deny it. I can only use holy magic because the goddess of the Celestial Church lent me her power. So what he said wasn't entirely wrong. So he nodded in acknowledgement. How did you know the goddess told me I had to save you? Because you still have much to do. Diego jolted, remembering her words from his dream. You still have work to do. He looked as if he realized something, his face filled with sudden admiration. Then he prostrated himself at Ian's feet with the utmost reverence. I bow before you, apostle sent by the goddess. The people with them thought Diego was being ridiculous. There was no doubt Ian had used magic to save Diego, but to call him an apostle of the goddess, he must be hallucinating. They decided to just observe for a while longer, but everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief, their hearts at ease. Mani, with her hands on her hips, couldn't help but chime in. You all nearly died, but you're still full of energy. After regaining their spirits, San Vago rallied his comrades. All right, shall we continue the manticore hunt? The whole group was fired up and ready to set off again. Yes. Ian also started laying out a different plan with his pet crow. I'll have Oberon scout ahead. He seemed a little worried. Will that be all right? It could be in danger. After the crow soared into the blue sky, he quietly answered with one word, no. San Vago truly didn't understand his intention. Remembering the manticore's dangerous expression, Ian became even more determined. He glanced at everyone with a serious expression. I know that thing is no ordinary piece of trash, so we have to beat it to a pulp. In the town, mournful screams and piles of rubble were everywhere. The manticore attacked a village, terrifying the people, a monster. The terrified townspeople fled from all directions. A son was holding his father's hand when his father suddenly fell backward. Roland looked back in horror, screaming, Father! But there was nothing he could do. The manticore was standing right behind his father, only a few steps away. In that moment of crisis, Roland saw a three-pronged rake nearby. Without hesitating for a second, he raised the rake towards the creature's face and threatened it, Get out of this town. Although Roland tried to calm himself, his whole body was still trembling uncontrollably. You monster! The manticore let out a disdainful chuckle. So this human is your father. Roland was even more terrified. How can you speak our language? Its booming voice rang out challengingly. I'll make you a good offer. Kill your father and bring him to me. If you do that, I will spare the lives of all the remaining humans. Roland trembled more and more, but that didn't mean he would agree to such an outrageous demand. You think I would agree to that? The manticore flashed a grotesque smile. Then you leave me no other choice. It roared, raising its claws toward them. Die. In that critical moment, he used his own body to shield his father. Just before the decisive moment, a piercing arrow flew through the air. Blood began to pour from the manticore's body, a new wound clearly visible. San Vago appeared just in time. As soon as he arrived, he engaged the manticore in battle to prevent it from harming any more innocent lives. The father and son looked up stunned. The Santiago Night Order. San Vador looked at the group behind the massive crater with a commanding presence, preparing to fight. They all began to get into formation, targeting the monster right in the middle. Even with one eye injured, Mariko's fighting spirit was still fierce. He gritted his teeth in fury. You beasts, are you that eager to die? Ian appeared in the meadow, the sunlight shining down on him as he smirked. What a desperate fool! Ian looked at him with pure contempt, still struggling so uselessly. Taunted Matiko couldn't keep his cool. Shut your mouth, Mage. But Ian just brushed him off. Is that just the bark of a loser? All talk and no action. He successfully provoked Matiko, who spun around and lunged at him. How dare you! With that, he charged, hurtling towards his opponent at full speed. And this was all part of Ian's plan. Matiko continued his furious charge forward. Just as he got close, Manny appeared out of nowhere to block Ian. She muttered a few magic words, "Oh, would grow." The plant suddenly stirred, shooting upwards. Vines shot out from both sides, coiling around Matiko and binding him. What is this? San Vador and his troops seized the opportunity to attack now. The soldiers gripped their weapons, readying for the fight. They quickly unleashed their attacks, aiming for Matiko's body. He roared and struggled. You only know these petty tricks. But the plan wasn't over yet. Manny shouted, "Ian Meredek, it's your turn." Ian's gaze towards his enemy was cold and impassive. He snapped his fingers, aiming his staff forward O-fire. The arrogance in Matiko's eyes was gone, replaced with stunned terror. Burn. A sudden flame erupted, engulfing Matiko from within. In the end, only his horrified screams echoed in the evening wind. Ian watched arrogantly as the blazing fire dwindled, now just a smolder in a pile of ash. After the blaze, the town returned to its usual quiet. The townspeople all bowed their heads as one. "Thank you so much, knights." San Vader replied graciously, "We only did what needed to be done." Meanwhile, Ian watched him bask in the glory with a strange look in his eyes. Oberon quickly leaned in to whisper in his ear, "Are you being left out?" Master Ian, flushing with anger and embarrassment, snapped quietly, "Shut up." Deep down, he already had a hunch they're probably scared of me because I turned Matiko into a fireball. But just then, the sound of footsteps pulled Ian back to the present. Roland and his father approached, speaking with deep respect. "Sir Mage, thank you for saving us." This situation left Ian tongue-tied, his mind swirling with confusion. I didn't do it to be thanked, but... While he was lost in his thoughts, San Vador approached as well. He didn't hold back, showering him with praise. "You were truly impressive. We caught Matiko, all thanks to you." Taken aback by his enthusiasm, Ian could only reply awkwardly, "I was just doing what Manny said." Seeing a man old enough to be his father being so deferential made Ian even more anxious. "Please lift your head." His tone took San Vador by surprise. It's rare to see someone with such incredible power and a personality like his. He stared intently into Ian's face and made a silent judgment a person like him could become a great figure who puts even the nobility to shame. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed, drawing closer. A group of soldiers approached Ian and his companion, demanding, "Are you the ones who captured Matiko?" San Vador admitted it without hesitation. "That's right." One of them spoke up quickly, "Forgive the late introduction, we are knights from the castle." That name piqued Ian's curiosity. The castle, the man gestured to them as he spoke. "Yes, if you don't mind, please come with us. Count Katina has requested your presence at the castle." As the group was illuminated by the chandeliers, a deep, resonant voice spoke. "Welcome, brave warriors. To think you would dare to stand against monsters in the name of the heavens." Katina leisurely raised his wineglass, enthusiastically launching into formalities. "You are truly righteous souls." A shy Salvador politely raised his glass in refusal. "It's not quite like that." Katina immediately sighed in response. "What a pity." He turned to the group as they ate and remarked wistfully, "If only this citadel had knights such as you." With that, Katina quickly turned to another important figure. "That's right, Sorcerer Mani. You can rest assured I will not let those clerics touch the forest where you live." Having received his assurance, she declared loudly, "Of course." After beating around the bush for a while, Katina finally turned to the main character. "And you, Sorcerer Ian, I've heard about you from my niece." But before he could finish, he was rendered speechless by the sight of the young man eating like a starving refugee. Only when Oberon couldn't take it anymore and whispered a reminder, "He's talking to you, master," did Ian finally stop. He instinctively blurted out, "What is it?" His completely nonchalant attitude froze Katina in place. How dare he act that way toward me? Sensing the man's displeasure, a glint appeared in the corner of Ian's eye. He quickly diffused the situation before the atmosphere worsened. "My apologies, the food was so delicious. I didn't hear you. I was just talking to my crow." Only then did Katina offer a satisfied, albeit forced smile. "I see." Taking the opportunity, he continued, "Where he left off, I heard you took great care of my niece." As soon as he finished speaking, a nearby attendant dazzled Ian with a brilliant chest. He stammered for a moment before getting the words out, "What is this?" But one look inside gave him his answer, a golden grimoire. A detailed user manual immediately flashed through Ian's mind. Just by tearing it in half, the magic sealed within would be instantly unleashed. He carefully lifted it for a closer look, and the more he stared, the more his mind reeled. Amazing, I can feel the high quality in every single character. Katina waited for Ian to come to his senses before boasting gleefully, "Well, do you like it? I had it specially prepared for you." Ian wasted no time hugging the treasure to his chest as he replied, "Thank you for such a precious gift." The Count generously played along. "It's nothing, really." Katina rubbed his thumb and index finger together and continued, "You brought Lucy back safely compared to that. This is a trifle." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly snapped his fingers. As if by magic, the door creaked open. A stunningly dressed Lucy entered, drawing the eyes of everyone in the room. Only Ian broke the mood, covering his mouth to stifle a laugh as he thought to himself, "What's with that nose?" The closer he looked, the more he felt his sense of style was being assaulted. Where in the world did she get a hat like that? Suddenly, Lucy cleared her throat, bracing herself. A moment later, she blushed and asked a very bland question. "It's been a while. Have you been well?" To which Ian gave an even blander reply. "Yeah, it's been a while." Salvato, sensing some romance in the air, grinned teasingly. "Oh good, so she's not your sister, but your lover." Ian quickly picked up his wineglass to hide his embarrassment. "It's not like that. It was a complicated situation." Katina didn't give him a moment's peace, cutting in. "Ian, I have a proposition for you." He mechanically lifted his head and asked, "What is it?" He glanced over at Lucy, then calmly said, "On my journey to avenge my niece, might I borrow your strength?" It was then that Ian finally understood the only things that fall from the sky for free are rain and bird droppings. So that's why he gave me the golden grimoire, and I wouldn't even have to risk my life on a battlefield. Ian quickly composed himself and began to calculate. I just need to provide a moderate amount of magical support, like I did against Matico. If things go well, I could even get paid twice, once by the Count, and once by Lucy. With such a profit to be made, Ian wasn't foolish enough to refuse if you require the aid of a humble sorcerer such as myself. He raised his head and declared loud and clear, "I will accompany you, my lord." 3 days later, voices could be heard outside the castle. "My uncle regrets that he cannot see you all off as he must prepare for the expedition. That's quite all right." Though reassured, Lucy still made a polite promise. "When you all return to the Taliban territory, I will personally welcome you." Salvato solemnly took her hand and replied, "I shall look forward to it." Meanwhile, Ian stood silently to the side, thinking about the deal he'd made. The number of knights had been reduced significantly after being dispatched by Count Katina. Suddenly, Salvato's voice pulled him back to the present. "Ian, thank you for everything." He turned his attention to the man and replied, "And you as well." Salvato seized the opportunity to make a clever suggestion. "When you have time, you should visit Chippa Island. I can introduce you to some mysteries that might pique your interest." The mere mention of it was enough to get Ian's attention. Chippa Island. He confidently explained that it's a floating island in the Coral Sea. "Just tell them you're looking for San Vidor, and everyone there will welcome you." Ian asked in surprise, "Is that your real name?" He admitted it freely. "I don't mind telling you." Then he solemnly placed a hand on his chest and introduced himself. "My name is San Vader of the Orcus family." Lucy's eyes widened as she repeated the name, San Vador of Orcus. She stammered as she asked again, "It can't be." "San Vador of the White Wolf." He seemed flustered by her excitement and dismissed it. "There's no need to remember an old man's name." Ian, however, didn't catch on and asked naively, "White Wolf?" Lucy looked at him like he was an idiot and chided him. "You don't know. The White Wolf mercenaries. They once thrived under the former emperor, and the emperor of that time bestowed upon their leader the highest title, swordmaster." Lucy suddenly pointed forward and exclaimed in disbelief, "Then this man is a—" San Vidor shyly scratched his cheek as she said his title, a swordmaster. Seeing her astonishment, Ian wondered, what's with the reaction? Lucy suddenly cried out, "He's a legend, a living legend." Ian just gave a nonchalant nod. "Right, a legend." San Vidor then burst out laughing, "Just like you." Ian heard him and looked confused. "What do you mean?" An image flashed through San Vidor's mind. "I will be the one to defeat the swordmaster." With that thought, he smiled at Ian. "Never mind then. We will take our leave here." As he stood there, San Vidor added, "Send my regards to Erdan. Thank you for everything." Julian burst into tears and gripped his hand tightly. "We have to see each other again." Ian thought helplessly to himself, "It's not like we're saying goodbye forever." Suddenly, San Vidor called out to Ian. He took Ian's hand. Ian looked at San Vidor politely. "Once everything is settled, I'll visit Trifa Island." San Vidor's face lit up as he replied, "We'll surely meet again then." And with that, they parted ways. Until that day, take care. Meanwhile, over with Katina. He slowly walked up to the platform, but Katina's face showed a look of deep thought. He blankly recalled Lucy kneeling and crying, begging him, "Uncle, please punish the one who killed my mother." As Katina thought of this, his eyes hardened and he radiated an indescribable killing intent. "He dared to kill my sister, and now he intends to marry Lucy." However, for the Katina domain, this situation isn't necessarily bad. I'll use Lucy as a shield to secure her territory, then marry her off to one of my men, and the Tarian domain will fall into my hands. Katina, deep in his eyes, was a look of utter hatred. Back with Ian, he was watching Lucy's radiant expression. After this is all over, I'll try talking to her. Katina stood on the platform with fierce determination. I, in the name of the law of this land, shall sentence the wretched usurper Rome. The soldiers below roared in unison. Long live the Count! This strengthened Katina's resolve. All of you with me. The soldiers immediately responded, Yes, sir. Night had fallen over the camp. In the kitchen area, Ian was busy with something. Lucy and 2 soldiers sat nearby, wondering, what is Ian doing? He stared intently at the bubbling pot of water I'm boiling meat. Hearing this, Lucy thought to herself, why is he going to boil it and eat it just like that? In the distance, 2 soldiers were whispering, I heard the mage is making some kind of stew. Stay away. Hearing them, he cursed under his breath. Idiots, I'm sterilizing. Lucy, who was sitting nearby, heard him and asked in confusion, sterilizing? Seeing her confusion, Ian explained, it's something like mysticism you wouldn't understand even if I explained. The 2 soldiers who overheard were even more shocked than Lucy mysticism dot model. A moment later, a voice called out from behind Ian Sir Mage. 2 soldiers approached hesitantly. Sir, could you check this for us too? Seeing them like this, Ian's blood boiled. I told you not to stand guard. As night fell, the entire camp was enjoying themselves together. Suddenly, Lucy let out a sigh. Hey Ian, I was just thinking about something. Hearing this, Ian frowned at her. What is it? Lucy glanced over at him. What do you mean? What is it? It's about your promised reward. That's when Ian remembered. That's right. Lucy looked at Ian seriously. I was going to give you gold, but I figured you'd be tired of that, right? The moment Lucy finished, Ian's eyes widened in shock. For me, Lucy said with a smile. So I thought long and hard about what would make you happy, and the result is. He looked at her doubtfully. The result. Lucy began to explain the demon sword Anorilso. It was a gift from the elves to the first Baron Tarian. Legend has it that the Baron fell in love with an elf maiden, and wielding that sword, he became the savior of the elven realm. Hearing this, Ian's face darkened. What kind of fantasy novel is this? He frowned at Lucy. If Tarian had such a powerful demon sword, why did he remain just a baron? She immediately retorted, that was 400 years ago. Ian asked dismissively, and Lucy smiled sheepishly. Anorilso. It's buried in the tomb of the first baron. So to get it, we have to dig up his grave. Ian was stunned, his face a mask of horror. A descendant digging up something her own ancestor buried just to give it to someone else. Ian's face went pale as he stared at Lucy. So is your ancestor's tomb some kind of time capsule? Caught off guard, Lucy looked bewildered. Oh, what Ian, now curious, spoke up. I don't quite get it, but it is a demon sword, right? It seems valuable. Wouldn't it be better for your family to use it? That's better than it just being a baron's showpiece forever, right? Lucy pouted at Ian. I haven't gotten anything back yet, but thanks to you, I've earned the right to fight. And I'm very grateful for that. As she spoke, she clasped her hands together tightly. It's precious enough that I want to give it to you as a token of my gratitude. Lucy shot to her feet. That's why I'm telling you I'm giving you that treasure. She turned and stormed off in a huff. You idiot. Seeing her run off, Ian called out in alarm Lucy. Left behind, he quietly watched her retreating figure. Maybe I was a little too harsh. Just then, someone approached. Mage Ronaldo came up to Ian. The Count wishes to ask a favor of you. The night grew later. In a corner of the camp, an angry voice shouted, if you don't want to get your asses kicked, then scram. You damn thieves. Otto's face was arrogant and defiant. We should be the ones saying that. Just hand over 3 chickens and we'll leave you in peace. Immediately, Helmet closed in on the other man. We have to go fight. You get it. If we're hungry out here, we won't have any strength left, will we? Suddenly, the color drained from Otto's face. He pointed frantically up at the canopy. Isn't that crow the same one the mage keeps? Helmet looked up thoughtfully. Now that you mention it. Suddenly, Obama flapped its wings and screeched, Caw Master is here. Caw, my master has arrived. Otto Diesel and Helmet's faces went pale. What the hell is that? The damn crow can talk. Just then, a voice called out from behind them. Hey! Pale and trembling, Otto Diesel and Helmet turned around. Ian walked up frowning at the 3 men in front of him. What do you think you're doing? In the flickering candlelight. Inside the tent, Katina spoke with a serious expression. Ian, I have a favor to ask of you. Ian, with his usual calm, asked, What is it? He coughed softly, looking extremely hesitant. Ian watched him, wondering. He seems to be having trouble saying it. What could it be? After a moment of hesitation, Katina finally spoke. I want you to stop the misconduct of the mercenaries in this town. Model. Ian was surprised for a moment and asked, wouldn't a knight be better suited for that? He rubbed his fingers and slowly explained, because the knights and mercenaries are partners, they often cover for each other's crimes and turn a blind eye. Of course, that's to maintain the mercenaries' morale. I could normally tolerate a certain amount of looting, but this is my granddaughter's territory. I'm counting on you. As long as you give them a warning, the mercenaries will know their limits. Seeing Ian's dark expression, the soldiers huddled together trembling. He questioned them in a cold voice. You dare to barge into people's homes like thieves and robbers. Oberon, perched on his shoulder, added punishment. Ian struck his staff on the ground as a warning. I'll make an example out of you. Oberon enthusiastically chimed in, punishment. The three men hastily apologized. We're sorry, Mage, we will repent. After that, as soon as Oberon and I caught a few of them, they became so scared they didn't dare show their faces outside. The mercenaries all hid in their houses, trembling and murmuring, we'll be goners if we go out now. The Count and Lucy were overjoyed when they heard the news. However, Bruno solemnly knelt down to report, My Lord Count, we have a serious problem. As a result, an unexpected problem arose. Bruno continued his report. To the enemy, our army is no longer a threat. Ian immediately asked, even though we have over 400 soldiers. He lowered his head and explained, because our army is completely harmless. Ian repeated in confusion, harmless. If the army had looted the territory, the people here would have pressured Crimea to stop the invasion long ago, because Crimea is in control of the T-Lion territory. But thanks to our peaceful march, Graham has had time to gather his forces. Not to mention, because our army can't act freely, morale has also dropped severely. Ian rested his chin on his hand, thinking, this has certainly become a strange situation. Bruno looked up, his voice filled with hesitation. My lord, will you permit us to begin looting from now on? Katina wearily rubbed his forehead. He slowly looked over at Ian to ask his opinion. Mage, do you have any plan to handle this situation? Lucy beside him also looked at Ian with worried eyes. Ian's gaze became sharper. He thought for a few seconds with his chin in his hand, then spoke slowly. It's not like there are no options at all right now. Katina's eyes lit up as he eagerly asked, what is it? Tell me quickly. Lucy praised him with an adoring gaze. That's Ian for you. In contrast to those two, a few soldiers standing behind them showed clear annoyance. Lucas said in a low, scornful voice, this mage is so arrogant. Somewhere in the T-Lion territory. Henry shoved the door open and cursed in frustration. So noisy, you detestable crow. He screamed in surprise as Ian's magnified face appeared before his eyes. Henry took a few steps back and asked hesitantly, who are you? Ian didn't answer, asking instead, are you the owner of this wheat field? Still in shock, his voice trembling with panic, he said, I asked who you are. A soldier behind him cut in impatiently. Hey, this is the disciple of the great mage, erudite Sir Ian, erudite Raven. Hearing that name, Henry's face immediately darkened. He panicked and prostrated himself on the ground, begging, I didn't realize I was in the presence of someone so famous. Please forgive my rudeness just now. Ian glanced at him. He announced through gritted teeth, the wheat here is all ruined. Henry looked up in a daze and asked, what do you mean by that, sir? Ian struck his staff hard on the ground and shouted, can't you feel it? Demonic energy has seeped into this field. The spirit of the first Baron of Tarion, whose land was unjustly stolen, is enraged. He trembled, tears streaming down his face, and anxiously asked, then what should I do? Yihan tapped his staff on the ground as a warning, then waited in silence. Suddenly his eyes widened. Yihan raised his hands to the sky and declared dramatically, the heavens above have spoken. The rage will only subside once Luis Italia inherits the title of Baron, so it must be. Well, now there is a rather ominous aura coming from over there too. As soon as he said that, he ran off, and the soldiers hurriedly called out as they chased him, Sir Mage. He shouted as he went, to think the domain would fall into ruin because of such a usurper. After a while, it seemed the rumors I spread had taken effect. The people of Tarion grew dissatisfied with Graham demanding Luis take over to escape the calamity. The townspeople relentlessly threw tomatoes at his door. Thanks to this, the morale of the Countess's army soared, and they marched straight for Graham's location. Amidst the cheerful atmosphere, Lucas watched him from afar with a look of clear displeasure. At the camp, he stood before the Countess in protest. "We refuse to fight on a disgraceful battlefield." A confused Katina asked, "What do you mean?" Lucas immediately accused Yihan of spreading rumors that the land was cursed. "That man is bringing disaster upon us. If we continue to associate with a mage like him, our honor will be dragged through the mud." Yihan looked at them in confusion and explained the curse was just a lie. "Why would you believe rumors that I myself started?" The whole group refuted him even more fiercely. "We can't believe a word that mage says." "That's right. He's definitely trying to trick us." He watched this in silence, his gaze darkening as he realized the problem. In other words, because they can't tell truth from falsehood, they just assume everything I say is a lie. This is so tiresome. But the main force in a war is the knights. The Countess's expression showed she understood this as well. You can't form up for battle without knights. In the end, she'll have to side with them. In a situation like this, is there any reason for me to stay? Seeing the hesitation on Katina's face, Yihan finally decided to speak first. "You don't need to worry, Countess." She shot to her feet and called out Yihan. He turned to leave, but made sure to add, "If my very presence makes everyone this uncomfortable, then I will leave. But from this moment on, no matter what happens, do not even think of asking for my help."